Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and Season 9 of Rick and Morty had an incredible set of arcs for Rick and Morty, so while I put together the comments updated follow-up videos for the season, here is the full season breakdown, starting with
There's Something About Morty, which is a reference to the 1998 film There's Something About Mary, starring Cameron Diaz and Ben Stiller, and the plot of the movie is aligned with the episode, basically just multiple guys instantly fall in love with this lady Ben Stiller likes, but it should be something about Rick since he's the stand-in for Mary. The episode opens on the family enjoying the new pool I assume Rick installed. The shot mimics a lot of overhead pool shots in a lot of movies, but between that, the cheating theme they push, and the ending slap, it kind of feels to me like they're parodying another movie as well. I just can't put my finger on what. Though it might just be using the tropes, because Dan Harmon, the creator of the show, always says he doesn't like doing parodies unless it's mixing like 3 movies together. Like Lawnmower Dog is a mix of Lawnmower Man, Inception, and Nightmare on Elm Street, at least. I just love that they're doing it with rom-com movies now and mixing in an insane amount of action. And they clearly got 7-Eleven to pay for some of that extra animation.
I don't give 7-Eleven enough credit.
I also want to point out that despite Rick hiding Evil Morty from Morty, he seems to be leaving the door open now, an interesting metaphor for him being a lot more open to connection than he was earlier on in the show. The few seconds we see his phone screen for, it's just empty text bubbles. He puts it down, though, making Morty want to know who he's texting. The beer he's making auto-cooling is just a regular Foamies brand he always drinks. The device seems to have wires plugged into an ice cube, presumably to power the cooling technology. This little Squidclops thing does not seem happy with Rick, and this is just a light bulb. Morty grabs Rick's phone though and ultimately discovers he's been texting with Evil Morty, but during the scuffle the Squidclops is freed and scurries behind the sink. We never see it again, so I'm kind of wondering if that'll come back later in the season. They keep wrestling as the theme rolls, which since it's the season premiere will break down. The first scene is of Beth rolling dice for some kind of D&D board game, Jerry as the bard with a broken lute and a million blades inside him, Morty's a ripped barbarian, and Summer's an elven archer. But Beth rolls a 1, which makes everyone sad before she blows up, and you can see the explosion in her eyes for a few frames right before she does. Then just a simple shot of Rick and Morty fly fishing on an alien world, Rick pushing the family dash from the Incredibles style in a big boot with a smiling sun in the corner, Beth and Jerry as rainbow unicorns, then Rick winning the Space Olympics on behalf of Earth. 9 seasons in, I still want to see an episode about them stealing a baby Cthulhu. After the theme though, they keep arguing about Evil Morty, with Rick saying he's only talking to him because Evil Morty has been blackmailing him with using the Omega device against the rest of the family. Rick compares him to Q from Star Trek, which is an insane comparison. I mean, Q is like, not quite an all-seeing god, but for all intents and purposes is basically a god, also an entire society of gods, also ultimately kind of a good guy who helps humanity. He basically judges humanity on whether or not they're a threat to everything, which does kind of seem like what Evil Morty does both in this episode and in general with Rick, at least until the very end of the episode, albeit like Q with kind of nefarious methods. But since Rick never responded, Evil Morty just shows up and demands Rick come with him, inviting Morty along too, who chooses to join. In the base, we see what I assume is a trophy shelf from the other adventures they're implying Rick's been having with Evil Morty. Like each one is like the USB from the end of the boss fight later in the episode. Down here, he's got another spacesuit and some guns. He then shows Morty why Rick has been helping him, the Omega device threatening to wipe out the rest of the family, Rick included. But honestly, given that this thing they go fight is legitimately a threat to the central finite curve, I feel like he could have just asked Rick without threatening the family part, but whatever. Guess he's really trying to earn that evil in his name, or he sucks at socializing and only knows how to scheme. In the screens showing the alternate family members, we've got a lot of Easter eggs. Starting here with Doofus Rick from Season 1 Episode 10, Mooch's family from the last season, Hellraiser Beth, I guess this version back in Season 5 Episode 5 really liked the Hellraisers and chose to join them. This is actually our Beth, judging from the sunglasses, bathing suit, and new pool. A miniaturized Jerry, a Jerry getting swarmed by flies, some kind of fawn Jerry, a cyborg Summer, a cyclops Summer, and a bearded Summer, some kind of warrior Rick, and just a regular Rick. Evil Morty uses his eye patch to activate his display that shows the central finite curve, and explains there's an entity that converts everything into more of itself, threatening to take over the multiverse. His drone is labeled Larkspur 11787. Larkspurs are a very pretty and also toxic toxic flower, generally symbolizing positivity though, and 11787 is the area code for Smithtown, New York. Can't be a coincidence there. He then says that they can't portal there because the entity can't learn their portal tech, which we see later on that it can absorb and recreate technology. So they take off on the ship and Morty gets a little jealous when Evil Morty works on a special matter container using his cyborg arm. They get to the entity who's eating a planet and attacks them as they approach. Rick generates a safety suit for Morty, who protests but puts it on before it shrink wraps around him and turns invisible until it's needed. Evil Morty and Rick start talking tech, making Morty even more jealous as Evil Morty collects a sample of the entity into his container. But I do want to point out, this whole scene, starting from when he blasts the hole in the wall, it's not that he blasted his way into a room. Rick is actively firing a beam forward to create a hole for them to fly through while it closes behind them, all the way through to the core, which gives me major Invincible Season 4 vibes, and the whole sample collection feels kinda Hail Mary to me as well, honestly. Anyways, he stores the sample in his cybernetic arm, which also seems to be processing it internally. They finally blast their way into the core, and the entity greets them, voiced by Tilda Swinton herself, and looking like a cross between Galactus, Brahma, and the Moonfall nanites. It attacks, causing 3 different reactions: terror, concern, and thrill. The windshield finally breaks, so Rick ejects it and they jump ship, but first, for 6 frames, you can see Morty in the back holding on for dear life. Once they jump though, you can see for a split second in the back that the ship makes its escape back through the wall. Rick starts off shooting lasers from every limb and his eyes, and Evil Morty sticks to just from his hands. Rick whips out some energy chainsaws, then dual pistols, throwing one to Morty, who attaches something to it that transforms it into a much bigger gun, and then they just clean house. But it doesn't matter because he keeps just creating more of himself. Rick splits his arm in 2, shooting lasers from all 4, and Morty is clearly doing the Superman pose here, and as usual with him, he does not fire a shot without hitting a target. He takes all these guys out in under a second. But the entity manages to catch Rick, though can't get through his shields to infect his matter, so Evil Morty scoops Morty up, using him as a human shield occasionally, before shooting a little missile containing some of the entity's own matter, which creates a big cloud that he hides them in as he attaches a spray tip and shakes up the matter container like a spray paint can to disguise themselves as the entity. He tells Morty to plant some bombs. Meanwhile, Rick's shields are still holding up to the entity's attacks. Morty is immediately caught with explosives, the entity realizing it's not actually him, but when it absorbs the bombs, it starts glitching out, and Rick reveals the bombs contained code to reprogram the entity's nanites to compress. So all of the entity starts flowing back into the main body, which shrinks and compacts down into a little USB, which Evil Morty pockets, and I'm just gonna say it, there's no way the writers aren't saving that USB to be a threat later on, especially given that we've seen Evil Morty store stuff inside his cybernetic arm. They left him in the time prison at the end of the episode with his eye patch, so for sure he has his robot arm. He probably still has the USB, and they went out of their way to establish in forced exposition that the entity could destroy the entire multiverse, including the central finite curve, and Evil Morty just pocketed it. I'm saying it, there's no way that USB doesn't come back. There's even a chance, if the writers really want to go down this path of making Evil Morty actually evil instead of just a victim of Rick's who wanted out, what they could do is say that he actually just used Rick to get his hands on the entity for some other goal. Not sure whether they're going for a redemption arc with EM or just the straight villain route though. But let me know what you think in the comments. EM and Rick talk about how different this fight was from the previous week's adventure, making Morty feel more insecure and jealous, which EM enjoys, so he taunts him by making them go out for waffles at Diney's, where he keeps trying to make Morty jealous. And when Rick goes to the bathroom, he even tells Morty he's gonna take Rick away from him. He seems to just be messing with him, but he also definitely enjoys his time with Rick, and Rick clearly enjoys the adventures with EM, even if they are blackmailed. EM also mentions that Rick showed him some time travel stuff in an attempt to make Morty jealous, setting up the time pausing device for later. But Rick comes back and they finally head out, and EM portals home with the milkshake glass and is, for once, caught off guard by something. His base has been trashed and defaced with at least 2 spray-painted wieners, the Omega device destroyed, and no sign of the ideal hostage family he had inside. He scans the device and tries to pull up the blueprints, but it says file not found. He then checks some other project files, starting with LUCS-LY93. I could not find any info on this one, but if you recognize it or any of the other ones, please leave it in the comments. 1-NDER-Craft, some kind of injector. Dujimo25, a little robot guy. And finally, Chillstone, which is the time-stopping device he uses at the end. But when he goes back to the Omega device plans, they're just gone every time. And he finally spots a Polaroid of Rick mooning him. So he calls him, but Rick has already blocked him, leaving him fuming as Rick and Morty make their way through the interdimensional space back to their dimension, and Rick explains that he modified the Omega device and put the plans themselves into the Omega device and activated it. So while Evil Morty could usually probably come up with a design again with the knowledge he already has, now when he thinks about the Omega device or his plans or design, he'll forever just think of an empty space. But again, we opened the episode with EM picking up another Doomsday device, an even more dangerous one actually. They also fly past a giant olive-looking thing, which has to be a reference to Dan Harmon's other show, Crapopolis, since Tyrannus always wears an olive pin over red and blue. I also love how they shatter through the dimensional wall when they get back home. Rick lands pretty roughly, but it's because he's in a rush to pull this awesome giant lever that teleports the whole house into a bunker dimension. He brings out the big guns and the armor, and he's saying Evil Morty will be coming for them now and that they have to be ready, and mixed in with all the tech weapons is a cannon. He then sets up a whiteboard to explain who Evil Morty is to the family since only Morty knows. First there's blueprints for his portal gun and eye patch, blueprints for his interdimensional ship and the X that was in EM's files when they couldn't be found, pictures of him in the Citadel and then escaping the Citadel. There's this spiky building, which is where we first met Evil Morty when he was using tortured Mortys as camouflage, a picture of him and the episode's Rick certified by the Citadel, the shot of him turning around in Season 1 Episode 10, meaning Rick was actually suspicious of him even back then, and a random picture of a Rick and Morty and another blueprint of some kind. Don't recognize the device, but let me know if you do in the comments. I also like that they got food from Bunker Burger. Rick then gives them all body armor pills that he says can protect them from only a few hits from Evil Morty, and tells them that his giant hand laser takes 20 seconds to recharge and seems to drain him somehow. He also points out military looking Gene and says that all their friends and neighbors in this dimension have gone through combat training. So when Summer asks,
"Is Bunker Gene from this dimension, or you think Rick brought him here?"
Seems like
the answer is they are from this dimension. Morty follows Rick back to the garage feeling insecure because of how well Rick and Evil Morty work together, but Rick just keeps reiterating that there's nothing to be insecure about and that he finds EM annoying. And speak the devil, they hear commotion outside and spot a hole forming in the bunker ceiling, so they arm up before his ship crashes through the ceiling, but as soon as it lands, all the cars blink red lights underneath before blowing up in Rick's first trap. All the turrets and Rick and Morty start firing, but only hit his robot butler as he uses some kind of phasing or decoy tech to get the drop on them. Rick fires, but the shields deflect it before he uses this crazy explosion tech that melts Rick's body away, and we see he's currently using robot hands but not a full skeleton. And in a rare moment of being nervous, Rick says,
that's cute. How many of those you got left? Like 2? Is it 2?
I don't know why, but I find that line delivery so funny. EM goes full Miss Marvel though and flicks Rick into the house, where Rick definitely retreats to move to a new body while one of his robots takes his place. That or he's just mastered the art of uploading himself into a new body in under a second. Either way, Morty fires his big hand laser at Rick, who massively overpowers it with his face lasers, though still not breaking Morty's shields, who manages to melt away its skin and grab it by its Doc Ock arms, smashing him through this lady's cute dog-themed home with weapons everywhere and a sign that says "War Not Love." It's definitely this dimension that has the crazy bunker people. Morty's already using his shield arm and chucks the Rick out of the neighborhood, only to be attacked by a giant house Mecha Rick, which I do believe is actually being operated by the real Rick, and Morty can enlarge his shield and grow arms and legs in order to fight it. I mean, despite losing the war, Morty is here facing Rick's arsenal with nothing but what he has on him. Imagine if it was just the other way around, but after taking a beating, Rick explodes out of the Mecha Rick's face and wraps around Morty's shield, seemingly shrinking it down a little, but Morty releases a laser wire grid of some kind, chopping Rick Rick into pieces. He then lasers his skull off and yoinks his brain out as well as the unibrow. He then walks towards Morty holding the brain, and we get this amazing Flintstones, Jetsons, Hanna-Barbera callback and hilarious gag to break the tension. We then get this bit where they just scream at each other because their nanites are fighting and we just can't see it. When they finally draw on each other again, Morty interrupts, and in the tussle, I checked frame by frame, Evil Morty does not lose his eye patch, it just disappears between frames. After his terrible plan fails though, we see it's made of nanites now, so he can just retract it at will. He dodges all of Rick's shots and launches back into the air, but Rick has used TARDIS technology to expand the space inside of this net, and filled it with targeted explosives and energy weapons. He survives, but his shields finally break. He tells them he hates them, and Morty says he's just jealous of their relationship, but Evil Morty is already running away and hacking the turrets. But as you may recall, he has to manually operate the devices he controls with those things, so when they fire randomly, Rick and Morty realize what's going on and sprint inside to find the family kicking the shit out of him since he has no shields or nanites left, and they have the bubble shields from earlier. He tries his hand laser but misses, and the family remembers Rick said it took 20 seconds to recharge, so they all go in to attack, but he uses his final move, the thing Rick had been waiting for and planted in Morty's mind, the time pausing device. But as he seems to genuinely be about to kill Rick, the time police from the season 2 premiere show up to arrest him, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key again. He surrenders since he's essentially depowered tech-wise, not that he's powerless. We get a classic perp walk shot and Jerry giving a statement to police in a very TV style, as Rick reveals he tipped the cops off and manipulated Evil Morty the whole time. Evil Morty complains he used the cops to win, but Rick doesn't care. The cops leave and Rick says,
Season 9, baby. Only an indefinite number more.
After the credits though, we see Evil Morty surprised at the lack of security in Time Prison, and it's obviously a setup for his escape. Like I said, he has his eye patch, clearly his robo-arm, and probably the multiverse-destroying USB stick inside of it that can destroy the entire Central Finite Curve and every other universe. This isn't over. I do see two paths though. I could see them using the fact that they opened with a canon episode as an excuse to close with one as well, or I could see them going the other way with it, making us feel his lack of presence in order to explain some major changes in Evil Morty's behavior, and not bring him back till the very end of season 11, because again they only do Evil Morty episodes in odd-numbered seasons, so it could basically be 3 full seasons without an Evil Morty appearance if they wait till the end of season 11. But I'm kind of leaning toward them using it as an excuse to double dip on the canon episodes this season. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Regardless though, he has a multiverse destroying weapon. That's not going away. Rick's Days, 7 Nights, a play on 6 Days, 7 Nights, the island survival rom-com that I think is actually supposed to be more of a reference to the hinted history between Rick and Marjorie. It definitely doesn't fit with the plot of the episode aside from the marketing having pushed it as like a hectic vacation story, which is what this obviously is, but the plot itself is definitely closer to parodying Severance. Like if Helly R was only ever conscious on vacations. They basically even use a direct quote from the series.
I am a person. You are not.
Who's not a real person now, huh?
Dan Harmon has a rule of 3s when it comes to parodying things, so we have to assume there's at least one other movie parodied in here, but aside from the one little clue that it could be The Matrix, which I don't really think it is, I'm kind of at a loss for what it could be this time. So let me know in the comments if anything comes to mind. The cold open is great, just a really grounded scene of Rick using traditional means to repair a flat tire. A lot of people called it satisfying, obviously meant to make us realize that he's handling this entirely differently than he usually would. There's no tech involved, just some melted rubber over a standard fire patching a hole in a tire, which yes, this all would work. But after the repair, the deer that caused the flat has a moment with Rick, and this is actually a really common trope in movies, from The Queen to Antichrist, Deer Hunter, and The Witch, plenty of others I'm sure. An interaction with a single deer is typically meant to signify some sort of transition or the crossing of some kind of threshold, so it makes perfect sense here. He's crossing from being Rick to being Ted, and when the deer comes back at the end, it's to signify that Ted has crossed the threshold of awareness, that he understands that despite how smart and capable he is, there are some things he just can't fix, and that includes his own happiness or the happiness of others. Something Rick definitely struggles with. Arguably one of his big arcs is coming to terms with it. After his moment with the deer, he keeps driving till he gets to the bowling alley, Dream Lanes, which there seems to be a pretty well-known bowling alley in Madison, Wisconsin called that, though it looks completely different. He walks in and walks past some pictures that definitely tell a story. Obviously Rick is in this bowling league, but also Marjorie's whole life is here. You can see a young Marjorie here with her mom, who she clearly resembles more as she gets older. She likes bowling, and we do learn in a passing line that she now runs the bowling alley as her mom left it to her. She's happy to see Rick and knows his drink order without him saying anything. We then get the voices of his bowling friends, and I'm curious, my fellow Office fans out there, can you pick out whose voice is whose?
My God, look who it is! Welcome back, brother! Think you can put in a word? He just wants to lay so.
Shit, you're a popsicle.
Marjorie is voiced by Amy Ryan, aka Holly. Little Mike is Paul Lieberstein, aka Toby. Big Mike is Ed Helms, and this is not an Office member, but Rob Riggle, technically guest starred. And Antonio is Oscar Nunez. 4.5 members of the Office cast feels like a lot, though. It was nice hearing so many familiar voices. Anyways, everyone's happy to see Rick as Ted and talk about how it's been too long. After the theme, we've skipped to closing time, and Paul's character asks Rick if there are any openings at his job selling PVC pipes, to which Rick responds,
Son, you don't want to sell pipe.
obviously a nod at Jim always talking about not wanting to sell paper. I'm surprised Ted Rick doesn't have one of these Dream Lane bowling jackets. I also love the abducted bowling pins, but they go their separate ways except for Rick and Oscar, who go to a store literally called Country Store. There's a store parking only sign, which feels specific enough that I'm surprised it's not used for anything. Also, picking supplies and fax? I don't really know what picking supplies are. In case you need to fax someone, I guess. Rick does say this place is permanently in the 90s, I guess. They go to buy some Two Moons beer, I assume a play on Blue Moon. A robber suddenly barges in, and when the lady ducks, we can see a no pants, no service sign. Rick's defenses activate to catch the bullet, technically right before the guy even pulls the trigger, anticipating that he was about to. And for a second, you can see the robber makes the classic Rick and Morty derp face as he gets injected with a syringe. He then has a moment of staring at his implants like he doesn't know what they are and walks away, freaked out, finally cueing us, the audience, in on the fact that Ted is not just a fake name Rick is using. He heads back to the RV where we see a picture of him and the gang holding an enormous fish they must have caught ice fishing next to some lures, and we can see here he has some skis, which is interesting. He opens his drawer where we see some casino chips and coins, a fork, a thread and needle, a nail file, and a cherry lollipop. He grabs the knife, but his cybernetics stop him from stabbing himself, and a hologram plays of Rick telling Ted he's just Rick with no memories but these trips, and that they're on a planet, interestingly, not an alternate Earth in a different dimension, but a planet that's only 400 light years away. Which, conceptually cool, but logically, an alternate Earth would have made way more sense. Like, what are the odds that there's an identical Earth-like planet where they even speak English that is not in any way aware of other forms of life, including Earth, as Rick says, all only 400 light years away? That is not far at all. That's only like 94 times further than the nearest star to the Earth, not including the Sun, Alpha Centauri. Like, just the teeny tiny part of the universe we can see is 46 billion light years across, a fraction of what the actual size is too. But the nearest Earth-like planet with English-speaking humans disconnected from aliens is only 400 light years away? In infinite space, another Earth is bound to appear, but 400 light years? It doesn't matter, and I'm being pedantic, so please make fun of me in the comments. But I'm just saying, an alternate dimension Earth would have made way more sense. Or just have it be ridiculously far away, like billions of light years. But whatever. We then see a junk box, a radio, and a box full of VHS tapes before a panel appears, and hologram Rick tells him if he's in danger to press red to have his memories restored, but if not, to press blue in order to have his memories of these events wiped so he can continue the vacation. Ted doesn't like either option, so he walks out and we see he has a bowling strategies book. He stumbles out terrified and over to the bowling alley where Marjorie seems to be living. She lets him in and shows him the new light system she installed. He asks if she's still got the bed in the back, and we cut to the next morning as Ted is deciding what to do. He goes and rolls the RV down a hill, I guess thinking that was basically getting rid of it, and we cut to him and the guys ice fishing as he tries to explain that he might not exist outside of when he's here with them, but they just laugh it off and we cut to them sleeping in the cabin. But a big egg ship shows up to take Ted back home, so he heads out with a gun and his bowling league shirt, which is cute. As he approaches the ship though, his leg phone rings. You may recognize the ringtone.
Fuck me.
Show us what you got!
2, 3, 4.
Fuck me.
Turns out it's Morty calling and asking him to get in the egg, but Ted absolutely refuses, so he tries to force him in, but his friends show up and ram the egg ship with their truck. They also make a gag out of Morty being worried he'll get in trouble if Rick loses the leg phone, and they never pay it off, so I'm hoping we see the return of the leg phone. Big series finale right there. But Rick explains the ship is from his alternate self coming to get him, something that the gang just never grasps at any point in the episode, but they say they want to help. And we cut to him asking Marjorie to evacuate the bowling alley and leave so they have somewhere to prepare traps for any more ships or drones Rick sends, which we then see a compilation of, including taking control of his implants, explosive bowling balls, and flaming sprinklers. When the drones arrive, they get blown up and shot down with a bowling pin gun, but the flaming sprinkler trap doesn't work, so Marjorie would come back to check on Ted, activates it for them, destroying the remaining drones but dying in the process. Brokenhearted, Ted drags a drone off to build more weapons and the guys follow, and we get this huge continuity error where he has bandages on from this perspective in the scene, but not when switched to this perspective. He tells them to leave because it's too dangerous and that he's going to track Rick down and kill him, but they refuse to leave him as he uses part of a drone to figure out where the family's house is. We then get a compilation set to Big Iron. Fallout fans will have enjoyed this scene a lot. And in the plans he draws up is this bowling ball antenna thing that he uses as a weapon after the ship crashes. But anyways, they build a makeshift ship, and once inside you can see Ted has hung up Marjorie's necklace, and yeah, it's kind of Diane-esque in a way, like technically it's Rick's fault she's dead. They take off, and I love that the sticks are literally the beer taps, that's hilarious. Once in outer space, they enjoy the sight for a second before activating some kind of faster-than-light engine, which gives them all ridiculous cartoonish features for a second. They crash into the garage and get greeted by a hologram of drunk Rick, which they still don't understand isn't actually him, so they just attack the projector until the garage fights back. Ted finally makes use of the prosthetics we saw him learn to control earlier, but it's pretty short-lived. Beth walks in, effectively ending the fight since Ted does seem concerned for her well-being, but Ed Helms takes her hostage as more of the family joins, but she's unfazed and Ted realizes she's his daughter as Summer uses an emergency code to deactivate the garage's defenses, permanently ending the fight. She then walks out saying she's going to the pool, and it's been mentioned or featured at least 6 times in 2 episodes since being added. I'm kind of starting to wonder if that's going to lead up to something, but I also have no idea what. Maybe an episode explaining how the pool got there in the first place? Morty realizes it's not actual Rick, and Ted realizes Morty was the voice on the leg phone and his grandson. Morty then starts looking for the red button as Ted asks the garage AI for tools, which it instantly provides. The guys then ask for a new bowling alley and prosthetics for themselves, which Ted is happy to do, but he immediately seems frustrated despite the guys really enjoying themselves, possibly because of how dumb they're being with the prosthetics. We cut back to the house, which they've clearly been repairing, and Rick is working on a little robot that dispenses those toothpick things. The guys are asking for more stuff though, like laser eyes, so Ted shoots a portal back to their planet. They think it means they beat Rick, so they get excited and steal a bunch of nondescript tech, except for this, which is clearly a new color Meeseeks box. We know it's basically just different brands, but it does make me very curious what the green Meeseeks would look like. I'm also always curious if that's them setting something up for later, but who knows. They leave and we cut to the Beths looking at Rick, worried about him, and this is weird to me. They should obviously already know he's naked and be seeing his ding-dong, but they only react once it reaches the screen? Doesn't really make sense to me, but whatever. He's depressed, so he portals away and eventually to a bar where he's getting hammered. I love that there's always sentient mosquitoes out there, and this hot dog looks terrible. He ice fishes with some actual ice fish, drunkenly destroys a town of tiny people, takes some shrooms with mushroom people, and then finally heads back to the planet with a bowling alley, where the alley has been destroyed, replaced with an L-Mart. He heads to the old ice fishing shack where the guys have set up an automatic fishing machine out of the tech they stole from Rick. He then heads to the graveyard to pay his respects to Marjorie, and the guys are there and literally hold him up because he's too drunk to stand, and it turns out it's not Marjorie's grave even, it's little Mike's, who was accidentally killed by his own prosthetic arm. They're all pretty mad at Rick, and Big Mike goes to attack him, so he uses a device that pauses people, the time tech finally perfected and without risk of tipping off the time cops. He sees the deer again from the opening because he's crossed another threshold. He portals home, but we also see a portal fluid low warning. He interrupts the family playing Downbeat again, a continuation of the long-running gag, since Downbeat is a TV term for what characters are doing at the beginning of a scene that gets interrupted by the real scene. He suddenly dumps the last few drops of portal fluid on the table, saying he needs help. Morty obviously has this reaction, grabbing his hand, because at the time he got portal fluid on his hand. They head back to the garage and Ted shreds all his stuff in an alien shredder before sitting down in front of the red button. He talks about how he feels he's failed and hopes that restoring his memory will make him be able to fix things for everyone. The key line being,
Yeah, we're just a little bit smarter. I can figure it out and be happy.
which is a heartbreaking line, because he's technically just as smart as Rick. They're the same person. What he no longer has is perspective, or the years of therapy that Rick has had for that matter. And based on how the tech seems to work, Rick retains all the memories of being Ted. So while yes, him remembering everything clearly changes his demeanor, clearly makes him sad in a different way, I do think the whole point of doing this is so Rick can remember what it feels like to feel, well, worse than he does now. Less in control, less all-knowing and therefore responsible. Like all he could do was hurt people. That's not what Rick is anymore. We roll through the credits and the post-credit scene is just him going on another vacation, but to a weird fish island, and this time with Summer and Morty as chaperones. So let's get into the episode, which opens on Beth complaining that the family's new pool desperately needs a clean and telling Jerry to call Keith the pool guy, but he's too insecure. Oh, and the title, Rick Fu Hustle, is a play on Kung Fu Hustle, which also includes a trio of martial arts masters taking on a much larger force. Rick walks up to tease Jerry and fix the problem with a pre-prepared robot arm complete with a net, a scrubber, a brush, a grinder, chlorine tablets, and a test file. He's clearly been waiting for this day, since apparently the pool was Jerry's doing. But Jerry doesn't want help, so Rick says,
Copy that. Treat Jerry like a baby so he can feel like a man.
which is a reference to Season 4, Episode 5 at least.
Hey, guess what, asshole? I did it without you.
Oh, God, it hurts!
What was that?
Healed your leg 50%. The rest is on you, big man.
And it's also part of this ongoing gag where Jerry can't even attempt to do a household chore without some insane thing happening.
Jerry, will you please just let me automate this fucking task?
I didn't ask for anyone's help. You two are welcome to leave. Whoa!
I was wondering if you could help me out with a bit of a rake situation.
Wait, no!
Easter is the time for giving. Fa la 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 la, Easter milk.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Morty walks up in a Boob World hat, excited to be going to Boob World, and like every time he does, they don't make it. Also an ongoing gag at this point.
It's a world for you, but it's actually to Boob World.
No fucking way. Boob World is canceled.
No, Rick! No, you promised! You always do this!
You know what? This one counts as one of your adventures.
Hey, come on!
No freebies.
Oh, man, I wanted to go to Boob World!
Well, now we can't because you fucked up. You want to go to Boob World, Summer?
Not today.
This sucks.
Boob World!
Damn right, and it's Areola week.
Oh, all right! Oh,
It's gonna be cleaning out, Morty.
Oh my God, adventures, Morty!
Be the bigger man so we can go to Boob World already.
Fuck that. We gotta set this idiot straight.
I can't believe I'm missing Boob World for this. Just apologize to the guy, maybe he'll unpunch you.
So they all take off, leaving Jerry alone with the dirty pool. They also clearly got a Trader Joe's sponsorship.
Trader Joe's hash browns, the most efficient booze absorber in the multiverse.
Rick mouth fries one of them and they take off for Boob World, but get into a fender bender instead with Liu Sin, a martial artist named after the Mortal Kombat character Liu Kang, whose voice actor Tom Choi is voicing this character of Liu Sin. Rick just wants to drive away because there's no damage, but Liu Sin says,
"But our bumpers collided."
Oh my God, is this how you make friends?
which actually winds up being proven true later in the episode.
I backed into your spaceship on purpose.
What?
I'm a lonely old man. The only way I know how to connect with people is through conflict. Can you relate to that?
No.
Which is funny, but also means Rick being mean here is semi-justified, especially because of how nice he was about it. But he insults him and Liu Sin death strikes him with a 5 pressure point combo, a Kill Bill reference.
Plan A taught you the 5-point palm exploding heart technique.
Of course he did.
Saying if he walks forward 5 steps he'll die, so Rick backwards walks away. After the theme, he's scanning his body to see if it's true, and before anyone says, why can't he just get a new body, it's because this is one of those principle fights. It's about beating the guy's technique head on, not circumventing it. He's basically just messing around, not taking it seriously like he would if it was Prime or EM or something. But he doesn't understand what's wrong with his body, so to test it, he gets inside of a body copy machine that literally scans you like a copy machine and has that one specific shade of green button that they all have for some reason. And it makes a perfect dumb copy of Rick, which shakes its balls when it gets printed, and even when he creates the legs heart only combo, despite not saying it, you can still see he does it. So he confirms it's real and then tries to study it, learning that if he walks the 5 steps forward, it will
induce commotio cordis.
A real term describing the rare times when a hit to the chest at just the right millisecond can essentially cause cardiac arrest by interrupting the heart's rhythm. Morty doesn't care though, since Rick could just switch to a new body and he wants to go to Boob World. So he storms off and we cut to Jerry watching his pool cleaning machine fail to clean the pool. So he looks up pool cleaner hacks on GooTube, and we see a pool cleaner explainer video and a video on how to upgrade your pool cleaner's software. He picks the software one and obviously skips through the most important part that could prevent the entire story from happening.
Really important to never, cause it's dangerous and bloody stuff of nightmares. Now that we've gone over the safety guidelines.
He sees some really normal comments asking for help and if it will work with a different model. Very realistic comment section for a video like that. But he follows the link provided by the video to a software patch, which is complete nonsense for a pool cleaner, but he downloads it and it immediately works. We cut back to Morty, who's back at Trader Joe's. Look, we had to pay for that Evil Morty fight scene somehow, okay? He runs into Liu Sin, who introduces himself and expresses a minor amount of regret before offering to teach Morty Kung Fu. We cut to his really cool stylized house as he teaches Morty some of the basic forms. They're interrupted by his cable guy, who says they don't have the right cable, so it's gonna take longer and cost more. To which Lou responds by killing him with a 5-hit combo. Morty literally just says he was doing his job, and that's enough for Lou to death strike him as well. So we cut back to Rick, who's built a backwards levitating capsule for himself as Morty backwards walks home crying and tells him about the death punch. Rick says,
My little poopa!
Which you'll remember from,
We played video games and got high, we did wrong,
Whoa, little poopas. Come on now. You kids, getting high and playing video games is the best, I swear to fucking God.
So Rick vows to destroy Liu Sin, and we cut to the pool cleaner processing the last of the gunk in the pool. So Jerry calls Beth to tell her, and we see Gavin again for the first time in forever. But she can't stay on the phone, so they hang up and the pool cleaner's new AI keeps asking for a new command. Jerry ignores it and sits in the pool, so it cleans his leg. He jumps in and it cleans his ear. He then just starts making out with it before we get the most insane 30-second sex scene I've ever seen in my life. 30 seconds, that's over 2% of the episode's total runtime, depicting Jerry giving it to a pool cleaning machine. Absolute insanity. I hate watching it, but I also love it and think it's hilarious. We cut to Rick and Morty approaching the Tiger's Nest Monastery, a real place they did a great job of modeling. Though they don't have superpowered kung fu masters, they say it is where Guru Rinpoche meditated for over 3 years. They knock and meet Lu's former master, who is 100% modeled after the airbending masters. Like there's no way this wasn't on purpose. But they tell him Lu's abusing the death punch, and he says he knows because he killed his cat, Queef Richards, which is a great name, obviously a play on Keith Richards. Rick asks him to help provide data, but he doesn't trust Rick won't abuse the information he provides. He suddenly gets a call from number 1 daughter, which is adorable, but he argues with her because she wants to bring all 7 of her partners to her mom's birthday party since she's polyamorous.
In my day, we called them sluts.
Which, let's just be clear, is insane for a last-minute thing. She hangs up on him, and Morty offers to help him with his daughter if he promises to help with the death strike afterwards. In response, he just strokes his beard for 10 seconds before we cut away to Jerry realizing what he just did. The robot wants scheduled sexy time and for Jerry to get a divorce, so he calls Beth for Keith the pool guy's phone number and takes off to find him next door as the robot turns evil. Jerry comes back with Keith, but the robot attacks him until Jerry steps in, pulling him into the house for safety. Meanwhile, Rick and Morty are at the daughter's apartment where there's a love is love tag. The carpet inside has the trans flag colors, and Master Jurgens is still just saying he thinks her 8-way relationship is weird. In the background, there's actually a continuity error with the banana. In this shot, there's brown on the top and bottom, and on this shot, there's not. Morty steps in and tells Jurgens to meet his daughter halfway, and in standard TV fashion, he does a complete 180 and tells her she can bring all 7 partners to her mom's birthday party. So Rick pulls out of the testing device and asks him to perform the death strike on it. He does, and the machine cures Rick and Morty, who then start running around like crazy. We cut to Lu's house, where he adorably keeps his keys and shades on a statue. Rick and Morty show up, surprising him walking forward, and show him that they have nanobots to help them perform the master's martial arts forms now. Lu attacks, and an all-out kung fu brawl ensues with the announced titled moves, starting with Mountain Fuck Punch, which is just a big punch, Worm Magnet Punch, which just makes you attract worms. Also, don't forget who paid for this fight scene, please. Next is Super Sizzler Pinwheel, which is another clear reference to Avatar, airbending specifically. Tabasco Punch, which I guess makes you taste spice. I also guess that's another sponsor. He steals some lady's milk and then uses Maximum Overdrive Punch to launch a car at Rick. Then Inflated Noggin Punch, turning Morty into a Little Bits guy. The fight enters this goopy burger, which I have no idea what that's supposed to be a stand-in for, but Telescope Leg launches Morty into it, where there's a teeny tiny sign that says, "We cook all our meat, juicy and almost done." Rick uses Bubble Burst Punch to shrink Morty's head. Lu launches Amnesia Knuckle Punch, knocking Rick into the laser tag place next door where he literally doesn't remember anything, but Morty hits him with the Control Z, which, if you don't know, is pretty universally the undo shortcut for most softwares on Windows. Rick hits him with the Butt Soup Punch, and he uses Reverse Uno Punch from the card game Uno. Lu then just tackles them out into the street where their moves cause an explosion, blowing up the city. Then a Hawaiian Punch mascot, Punchy, shows up as a punching god named Punchy, voiced by Dan Harmon, show creator. He comes out and says they've abused the martial arts, causing Lu to freak out before we cut back to Jerry as he for some reason confesses to banging the pool bot, to which Keith weirdly responds, setting up him trying to blackmail Jerry for extra money later in front of Beth. Neither of them notices the pool bot climbing out of the pool though, or through the kitchen window. It then turns on all the Bluetoothed water devices and closes the house shields in order to flood the house and turn this into a Jaws situation. Back with Punchy, the god, he's making them fight a giant monster as punishment for abusing the martial arts. It shoots energy beams at them so they hide. Lu confesses he intentionally bumped Rick's car to make friends. Lu says there's there's only one move that can beat the monster, but it requires 3 people, and he never learned it from the master. So Rick offers to give him nanobots too, so he can do the master's moves. And we cut back to the pool bot trying to kill Keith, Jerry defending him before fake seducing the bot again, but right as it's about to do whatever it does to him, he attacks it. He opens the blast doors and they get washed out with the water. Beth walks up and the pool looks amazing, so she's happy. Keith tries too loudly to blackmail Jerry, but Beth doesn't care if Jerry bangs the pool cleaner since she's banging the hairdryer. And back with the boys, Lou has the nanobots and they all have cool new boots. They Super Saiyan out, and I can't hear a line like this without thinking of Fast and Furious.
One last time, together.
They run out and launch Splatter Bolt Kick, which is just a million kicks going around and around. It destroys the monster, and the punching god accepts their victory as penance and recedes into the clouds. We cut to later that night as everyone, even Lou, the master, his daughter, and her 7 partners, show up for a pool party, which happily closes out the episode. After the credits, we just get the payoff I played for you in the opening, but it is really funny. I have seen a lot of the discourse online has been critical of the episode, at least up to 12 hours after air, and I find it kind of surprising. This felt like a really strong episode to me. Great Jerry plot, a petty Rick insisting on winning unnecessary terms, and the cheesiness of how it wraps up is mimicking the exact types of moments that we see in Kung Fu Hustle, the main thing it was parodying. I also think, to some degree at least, that some people tend to dislike episodes where they feel like Rick seems weak in some way, but that's definitely not the case here. Choosing to fight an unnecessarily tough battle for fun is different than not being able to survive the battle. It's like those of us who choose to play every game on whatever the hardest difficulty is the first time around. It's enjoying the challenge, but if he wanted, he could just download to a new body or to a new robot or whatever. But anyways, that's all I've got for this episode.
So let's break down the episode starting with the title, which is a pun on A River Runs Through. I wouldn't say the episode in any way represents that movie or novella, but they are folksy fly fishers, which explains that, and a larger theme in the movie is basically that you can't do anything but love your family members who are actively hurting themselves but refusing help from anyone. Definitely a theme for Rick as a character, and the primary example used in the movie is alcoholism, which is obviously a big part of Rick, and in this episode specifically.
It's a disease, Morty. A genetic disease. It's already in you, Morty.
But we'll dive into that stuff more as we reach those moments. Let's start with the episode opening, which is Rick portaling into the dark garage, which I'm gonna brighten up for the sake of clarity. We can see a couple of empty Foamies cans come through the portal with him. He gets like 10% of this wine into his mouth before he leans, and it's hard to notice because of the dark despite being the main thing that's happening on the screen, but he literally pisses himself here. And he's smiling while he does it, which is great. He then continues drinking and stumbling all over the garage, and for anyone who's known any proper drunks, I knew a lot while I was in the Navy, this is actually a very realistic depiction of drunken stumbling. I also literally knew a guy named Ben who did this exact thing in front of like 10 other guys, myself included, except first he drunkenly got everyone's attention so we could watch him laugh while he pissed himself. And this sounds specifically... I have heard from way too many drunk people. This was a very realistic drunk scene. He gets over to his desk though, and no, we haven't seen this specific keyboard screen projector before, but he's always got new stuff going in the garage. He starts trying his password. If we go through the scene frame by frame, he clearly looks off doubtfully during the first try, which is why he erases it and restarts. It fails, and he tries it several more times, but fails again and again, and you can actually see he tries multiple length passwords, so he just fully forgot it, I think. I do love the one key at a time entry though. We've all done that one after a couple failed attempts. But after his 5th attempt, it locks him out, causing a security lockdown, and in the wide shot, we can see they added the beer bottle he tossed earlier. I always love continuity like that in animation. But the house fully locks down, so Rick releases a primal... which is just really funny to me that drunk Rick calls out for him like that. And honestly, I know they have the line later about Morty being his password, but Rick denies that and actually calls Reese the guy with all the passwords. So I have the tiniest sneaking suspicion, like the same amount of me that suspects we're still in the fear hole, that this is actually still Ted from the vacation episode. So just last episode and this one, but there have been a couple moments that made me suspicious. The fact that last episode he
he took the heart-exploding punch seriously instead of just printing a new body or moving into another robot body. But like I said in that breakdown, I think he was just doing that to prove that he could beat it head on. And now here he gets locked out and immediately yells for Morty? Kind of reminds me of this.
Morty!
We're in the middle of a game!
Morty, Grandpa needs you. Grandpa needs you, Morty. Come on.
Okay, Rick.
It'll just take a minute.
Ted.
I'm not saying that is the case, and they did animate him very specifically, changing his expression completely on the exact frame that the button gets pressed, but like I said, I just feel like there's the tiniest chance they do a reveal at some point. Morty does this little wave, probably because it smells like piss and liquor in there. He walks in and Rick says good morning. Morty says,
"Sure thing. You want breakfast? Or dinner?"
Obviously indicating it's daytime and Rick has lost track of time altogether. He gets annoyed by the implication and yells,
I only had a couple of drinks, Morty.
which is obviously false. Just since he's walked into the garage, he's had at least 4 drinks, if we don't assume those 2 Foamies cans were his. Plus, before even walking in, he was drunk enough to piss himself. So he feels the need to lie about his drinking, a very basic sign that you're an alcoholic. What's funny for me is that until I was like 23, I actually lied to everyone that I drank all the time, even though I didn't almost at all, because I wanted people to think I was cool, which makes no sense, and neither does lying about the number of drinks you've had to your loved ones unless you are an alcoholic. Which, I mean, yeah, Rick definitely is. So Morty ignores him and just asks what he needs, to which he yells that he's locked out of the computer and it's Morty's fault, which I have thought this through, I don't think is technically true. Rick says,
He's got all my passwords, Morty. He's not a guy. He's a wallet. He's a program that unlocks my computer.
And Morty even asks,
Am I your fucking password?
It's more complex than that. Our relationship is unique in the multiverse.
And you need a cool big friend to verify?
and Reese literally says about himself,
I was a 2-factor authenticator.
So basically Rick was looking for a way that an external system could verify that he is in fact himself and not just some alternate dimension version doing a really good job of pretending to be, potentially even with some technology to fool any scanners. He needed something scannable that was completely unique to him in order to verify his own identity in case of a lockout. And the only thing he could come up with was his relationship to Morty, which apparently is the only one like it in the multiverse. C-137 is obviously unique on his own, but so is Prime, and so are a lot of the Ricks we saw in the Citadel. Our Morty, Morty Prime, is also pretty unique, as is made clear even in the first season of the show. That's not enough though, it's the specific relationship between these two which is definitely being said for a reason. It feels like another little nudge towards some ultimate destiny between C-137 and Morty Prime that the show first started hinting at here.
A cocky Morty can lead to some big problems. Can be a real bad thing for everybody.
Oh yeah, how's that?
I'll explain when you're older.
I kind of think Prime, Evil Morty, and whoever else we get throughout the show might just be distractions, with the real endgame story being about whatever our Morty, Morty Prime, winds up becoming. But anyways, he blames Morty for the lockout, but the reality I think was he knew the security check call, kind of like those home security systems where someone calls you when the alarm goes off. That call was about to come in, so he knew he needed Morty to do the verification, which is obviously why he screamed for him. But he's hammered and self-conscious, so he's also just defensively screaming. He also starts punching the computer, which shocks him in response, and when he falls on the floor, we can see he cut himself when he smashed that bottle of wine. He also releases another He screams that Morty doesn't care about him and wants him dead, and even says,
Evil boy, wicked boy.
which he's literally calling Morty evil. Evil Morty. We've watched Rick remove the rebellious pieces of Morty over and over again throughout the series. Our Morty is also the most likely to push back against Rick. I mean, that's how the series literally opens. Maybe Prime did something to his Morty. Something to ensure he becomes like an actually evil Morty. Not like the way Evil Morty is evil, where he's basically just like a Rick and just someone who wanted out of the system, but a genius Morty who like sets out to control things the way Prime did by starting his own little interdimensional Rick club where he was the one in control. I mean, look how easily Morty Prime could bring the other Mortys together. But instead of like Prime just kind of vaguely wanting to have a good time and hating Ricks who were different, time, Morty Prime could want something else entirely. Maybe instead of a central finite curve, where realities where Rick is the smartest are cordoned off from the rest, maybe a properly evil Morty would want to destroy every dimension where Mortys aren't the smartest beings in the galaxy. Because to be clear, the way infinity works, he would just need to reach the point in his own universe where he was the smartest, and there would already be an infinite number of other universes where the same was true. And then it would just be a matter of finding a weapon, maybe one like the one EM got his hands on in the season premiere, something that could actually destroy the multiverse, and protecting only the dimensions in his own central finite curve from it, or something darker, I don't know. But Rick gets a call, and once again, like in the second episode of the season, his ringtone is from the destroyed planet in the Planetary Singing Contest episode. It turns out to be Reese though, which Rick and Morty both get super freaking excited about, Morty forgiving Rick for his drunken ramblings and cheering before Reese walks in, with this glorious background light, which is a classic effect meant to cue an audience in on the fact that someone is special in some way. But we see at the end when Rick reuses it in the cutscene that it actually must just be some lights Rick set up to help get the vibe right and get Morty excited. Reese, in case you didn't pick up on that iconic voice, is Owen Wilson. Wow! He walks in gloriously while Rick and Morty cheer, and I do wonder why Morty didn't find it weird that 15 seconds after he called to see if they were available, Reese walks in from the interior house door, but whatever. We cut to them fly fishing on a beautiful alien world for six-eyed fish. We see the scene from this season's theme song where Rick rubs the alien fish on Morty's face, but now we see Reese stops Rick, which is funny since Rick programmed everything Reese does, so this is probably one of the ways he tricked Morty into liking Reese, by messing with him and having Reese stop him. He runs away laughing and Reese gives Morty a quick look and smiles, kind of making it seem like he does actually care about him. That night, it turns out Morty forgot the marshmallows for the campfire. Rick gets mad, but once again Reese talks him down, and this time they make up, and he says, "You're the real deal," which is obviously a key phrase, and also the moment he confirmed this was actually C-137 and Morty Prime. He repeats it again at the end, but we'll cover that when we get to it. Rick's watch lights up at the moment he says it though, and then he gets a call from quote-unquote work saying they have to end the trip. Rick way too hastily packs up and gets ready to go, making it kind of obvious. They get home and Morty tries to talk him into quitting his job, but he says he can't. Morty doesn't seem to notice that the lockdown is already lifted when they get home, and Rick immediately logs onto the computer. But while they talk, a raccoon sneaks into the cooler and looks so happy after finding the fish, but Rick's defenses are activated and Reese kills the poor raccoon. He then does a full room scan that really reminds me of the scan that the little drone does in The Incredibles. Rick rushes over to shut him off, but Morty obviously already figured it out. They start arguing, and I love how Rick uses the cooler to wipe the remains off his desk. He admits their relationship is basically his password reset verification process, and taunts him about them having a special relationship. On this shot, if we mirror it, we can see he's visiting a site called Circmate, a porn site for sentient circles, with an ad for 2 circles, 1 radius, which would just mean 2 of the same size circle, but I think what they mean is 2 overlapping circles, which is pretty hot. Hot annulus, which in this context I think is supposed to be the outer ring area made when a smaller circle is fully inside of a bigger circle.
Okay, that's very hot. I might lose a little cum myself.
Let's get concentric. Think targets, so I think it's basically a circle gangbang. The menu has entries for accounts, videos, live cams, and categories. I don't know if I could handle live circle on circle action, man. The third circle joins the party in the video he's watching, and Rick scrolls. Keep in mind, this is all in the background, mirrored, while they're arguing about Reese. A shocking amount of detail for a pretty missable bit, but I love this kind of stuff. He scrolls and there's a small diameter click here ad, obviously a small dick joke. Also a couple of premium videos, this one featuring 2 big circles and a little circle. Is that legal? And just a bunch of different groupings of circles. It's a great bit. I feel like they got forced to mirror it to meet cable TV standard requirements. Morty storms off, angry another friend wasn't real. He angrily climbs the stairs 2 at a time and screams into his pillow so loudly and continuously that Rick hears it downstairs as he's chugging vodka. They do this extended bit where he just keeps chugging from it forever until Beth finally asks how he's doing that. He drunkenly explains there's a portal at the bottom of the flask leading to the bottom of a vat of vodka that hog people keep full for him, setting that up for later. and he walks off to continue drinking. Meanwhile, Morty is still mad, but he goes to talk to Rick about maybe still hanging out with Reese, even though he knows he's a robot, but Rick is drunkenly taking him apart, saying he's like a credit card. You have to shred it before you throw it away. Morty's sad, but Reese says it's his own fault for
going all Iron Giant in front of you.
Which is spot on. His eyes turn red, he grows 3 gun things from his back and shoots a giant beam. Yeah, that's definitely based on Iron Giant. He also says he's not really alive, but Morty's still sad, and Rick calls him his wallet, which is the last straw for Morty, who knocks Rick over, enters a bunch of wrong passwords to cause a lockdown, and drags Reese into the sub-basement. Rick tries a really childish-looking control panel, but can't get it through. Morty talks to him through a radio, saying he cares about Reese and doesn't want him to die, but Rick drunkenly yells he's not alive and doesn't matter. Kind of a facile argument to someone who just said they care about Reese, but Rick is hammered. Morty grabs the Earthworld hat from this box. Earthworld, you'll remember from the Danny DeVito episode last season, the Curix's case of Benjamin Button. He puts it on Reese to cover up his brain and powers him on. As he stands up, we see in the background what's clearly a tubed baby alien, like from the series Alien. There's also something triple locked back here. Curious if it's just background fodder or if they have something in mind. But they keep heading down since Morty says he has a plan, and we cut to Rick trying and failing to laser through the security, destroying a satellite in the process, causing one of the neighbors to yell about the game getting cut off, so he pulls his phone out and calls his security system support line, which is just a phone center but with extra dimensional orbs of sentient energy, even with the supervisor. They've all got these crazy looking extra dimensional phones, but weirdly normal looking computer screens. The guy answers the phone.
Huge clouds, metallurgy.
Metallurgy is the practical science of metals, extraction, refinement, creation of alloys, a million other things, but in this case it's magic sentient clouds creating ridiculously tough materials. Rick tells him he locked his key inside the vault and needs help getting in. The guy says he'll need remote access, which Rick, using Inspector Gadget style magnification, says he can provide. So he takes the phone over to Jerry, who seems really sad reading whatever this book is, and super happy to be getting an inexplicable call on Rick's phone. The sentient cloud transfers through the phone into Jerry in an awesome process, Rick catching the phone midair, which is pretty cool. And the fact that he can just do this through a phone, it kind of makes me think Rick's been working with them for a while, and studying them is how he learned to do this from season 3 episode 1.
Good enough. He's a spy, blow him up. I'm gonna go take a shit.
The cloud entity adjusts to the new body and also keeps commenting on how much mass these bodies have, which yeah, compared to a cloud. He settles down though, and when Rick gets annoyed and he walks into the garage to see the vault, he also gets a little annoyed. Once there, he comments,
"We don't sell this model double bonded.
I know, did that myself.
This is quality work."
Oh, thanks.
Which I've thought about, and I think he's saying, based on the fact that most armor plating now functions in layers, and in metallurgy, bonding is usually talking about the fusing of two materials at the atomic level, and that chemical double bonding for metals doesn't usually mean solid metals like we typically think about. So I think he's just saying that whatever magic extra-dimensional metals they're using, there might be 3 main layers, and each layer is bonded with the next at the atomic level. Or it's just nonsense. He informs Rick the custom work voids the warranty, which, classic. He says Rick has to dig it out while he gets supplies from a store, which Rick can tell is just an excuse to experience some human experiences. Meanwhile, Morty is cracking one of those green glow light sticks. There's a panel on the ground, but I think whoever did the coloring messed it up because, based on where it goes, the top should be the lighter color and the bottom should be the darker color. Morty seems worried that they have to cut through the prison level, which sounds way more exciting than it winds up being. But they get to the door and Morty asks if he can use his weapons to blow the door down. When he responds, we can see Rick at least has a camera pointed at the prison level, and he explains he can only attack things that are threatening to Rick, Morty, or the house. So in a genius move, Morty hurts himself with a door so Reese can blow through it. Although I may have gone with punching it instead of headbutting, but that's just me. Morty nervously enters the prison, but it turns out all the prisoners already killed each other and Rick can't run a prison. But let's brighten it up and see if we can't spot any familiar faces or corpses. There's some kind of bug who clearly killed whoever this old guy was. There's this dude who I think is faking being dead but never attacked, so he's probably just hoping to survive. There's an octopus guy up here next to a blonde man. This lady's been torn in half and this guy's been headshot. I don't recognize these guys or these, but if you do, please leave it in the comments. Reese punches the code in to disable the alarm. I guess he does know all of Rick's passwords. And as they walk past this guy, he grabs at Morty and Reese Iron Giants him before they keep walking. Meanwhile, Rick is wondering where the guy went with Jerry's body and using cute little excavation bots to dig the bunker out, as well as some new tunnels. Beth and Summer call down to Rick asking where Jerry is, and we cut to him going through a car wash for the sensory experience as Rick calls him saying he's obviously not out getting supplies, but he insists he is and hangs up before going past a sign of the various washes you can choose from. No jokes, so I'm not going through them, but it does set something up for later. The most expensive option you can see has a rainbow wax.
Why do I taste rainbow wax?
Morty and Reese emerge from another blast door, and the background they walk past, I stared for a while. There really aren't any noteworthy details. It's all just nondescript tech parts, but there is a random bottle of champagne by the door. Morty says they made it as they enter some kind of storage space with a bunch of plastic covered old-fashioned bulky machines, as well as one of those electricity orbs and a suitcase. They approach the machine at the end and remove the cover before Morty starts it like a lawnmower. It powers on and prompts them to choose a destination. Reese picks one and a rectangular portal is generated by the machine, feeling a lot more like a doorway. And even when they emerge, the other side is also rectangular. So this, I think, explains all those rectangular portals we saw back in the Rick Prime finale, because there were a shocking number of rectangular ones, and it was a big question why some of them were rectangular. And now we know. They seem to be doorway portals generated by a stationary machine. Now we just need to know where the triangular ones come from and a bunch of the other colors. Anyways, they're surprised because they picked a forest-looking place, but this is a town. We already see the actively being vandalized statue of Rick. When it cuts back, we see the doorway also comes up at a train station. Definitely a Harry Potter reference, but Morty asks when the town got here, and this guy says when the god in the white coat arrived. We see a close-up of the Rick statue, modeled after the famous Walt Disney and Mickey statue, but with a flask instead of Mickey. The Vandals are wearing Guy Fawkes masks, probably a reference to V for Vendetta. The hog guy they're talking to says,
"Can't say I blame him. If wages keep stagnating, maybe I'll do something worse. Haha."
setting up exactly what he does later in the episode as a result of Rick forcing their culture to make him vodka. But he walks away and Reese says he's still happy with the place, so they say goodbye and we cut back to Rick as the cloud guy comes back with Jerry's body. He brushes past where he's been for the last several hours and uses some scraps there's no way he picked up at a store to do his magic and unlock the security. Rick's face at first is angry, obviously not because the guy fixed it though, but because of how easy it clearly was and that he probably had the handful of scrap the guy needed somewhere in the garage already. And obviously because...
Bro, you made me dig out the whole thing.
Morty comes out though, pissing Rick off because they just got it open and apparently the technician guy is super expensive. Does make me wonder what Rick considers expensive though, but Morty tells Rick he used the old portal device to send Reese to another reality of hog people. Rick immediately realizes they're going to attack him using Reese, and he's right. The whole house locks down and the hog guy that Morty talked to earlier comes on the screen saying he knows all of Rick's passwords now. And they do this bit where the lady in the background realizes she's on camera and suddenly puts her mask on, which is kind of funny. Rick blames Morty, saying their whole planet runs on his tech and now they have full access. The garage's defenses start attacking them and Rick shields everyone, but the center of the room starts spinning around them. The hog guy calls back that website from earlier.
Oh, are these circles fucking?
They're making love!
And Rick seems to know that the cloud support guy has like super abilities. So he shoves him out of the shield and tells him to rip the computer out while the room is still spinning, which he's actually able to do, as well as dodging gunfire and being able to hit the spinning gun with that computer. With the turret down, Rick unshields and jumps for the door, pulling Morty with him out into the main house, Super Jerry following close behind. They find Summer and Beth fighting the couch, which Rick apparently turned into a robot along with every other piece of furniture in the house, which are all now hacked and attacking them. Summer worries Jerry's bleeding so much, but he says he can make more blood, which she calls badass. Beth and Rick kill the coffee table before the family teams up and finally kills the couch. But lava flows from under the walls to cover the floor, and the cloud guy seems way too interested in it, but Rick pulls him up. Morty uses the moment to make a really obvious point to Rick.
You ever think about how instead of wrapping yourself in infinite layers of defense, you could just be nicer to people?
And let's just say it, these insanely main layers of security are starting to reach Rick Prime levels of obsessive layers of defense because he knows he's pissed a lot of people off. And Morty is right, especially in this case. He could have just not made a culture dedicated to making him vodka, especially when there are way easier ways to create a practically limitless supply of vodka. I mean, did he learn nothing from the car battery incident? But I digress. The hog guy calls him to taunt him about controlling all his furniture, so Rick hands the phone to Jerry so the cloud guy can transfer through the phone into the hog guy, who starts attacking everyone and disables the floor is lava protocol before transferring back to Jerry. But all the furniture is still in attack mode, so the family keeps fighting until Rick says to head for the emergency shutoff in his room. The furniture chases them and we see pictures of Reese and Rick and Morty, but they shoot lasers at the family. This one's just them with a giant fish, but this one is them getting eggs out of a nest. The furniture continues chasing them, but they make it to Rick's room, which now has one of those portable antenna TVs. There are also plans for his gun, some kind of tube, but they don't show us most of it this time. Usually there's a picture of PB's wife up here and other stuff, but they literally only show us these two angles on the room this time. Anyways, with the door closed, Rick pulls his emergency switch, which turns out to just be a super EMP, knocking out all electronics, including his own implants. They walk out in relief and Rick pulls out his flask, but it starts shooting lasers and then Reese explodes out of it, reprogrammed and reskinned for the hog people. He attacks them and they run. As he chases, Beth comments that Morty has way too many adult friends, which is true. With no implants, Rick and Morty have to beat Reese to death with pipes, but he's just too strong. Morty tries to talk him down because they were friends, but Rick says,
You can't love something out of hurting you!
which is just a toxic and really unhealthy perspective on the world. You can't love someone out of hurting you? I mean, sweet Jesus, Rick, you're regressing. It'd be one thing if it was just an observation of his own opinion without letting it impact how he treats people, but this is clearly like part of his current mentality, that people are gonna hurt you even if you love them, so better to keep them at a distance. I definitely think he dropped therapy. I'd love to hear what Dr. Wong has to say about any of this, especially since the two just started screaming "I hate you" at each other literally like a dozen times back and forth over and over, which somehow causes Reese to be momentarily lucid so he can say this before dying.
You're the real
Probably doesn't mean anything.
So let's unpack that, because obviously it does mean something, and it's already been laid out for us. He literally told Morty he had to protect him and Rick from being hurt. Well, they are obviously hurting each other. That's what the episode is trying to make clear for us, that right now, C-137 and Morty Prime are hurting each other. That was the phrase he said when he confirmed that this was the real C-137 and Morty Prime, when that was his programming. Well, now his programming was to hurt them, and in the same way he couldn't directly attack anything that wasn't specifically hurting one of them, I think here he couldn't directly stop harm from coming to either of them, and killing one of them would stop them from hurting each other, which would be against his programming. So instead, seeing them permanently hurting each other satisfied his new programming, which is why he says that phrase to indicate he confirmed what he needed to confirm. Rick destroys the brain, and as the house shakes, Beth and Summer ask about the giant hole around the house and the new tunnels, which Rick says he has managed, kind of thinking those tunnels might be important now. We see his automated construction crew working and that the cloud guy is still in Jerry because he doesn't want to leave Earth, but after the family talks it over, Morty asks Rick to put the cloud guy in Reese so at least he can go on living somehow. He leaves and Rick blows up the hog people's city before chugging at least 6 flasks and telling Morty he's gonna be an alcoholic too one day, which yeah, is pretty dark in and of itself. After the credits, we see Rick's locked himself out again. A new neighbor walks in and Morty immediately stabs him, assuming it's another verification bot from Rick. But he turns out to be real as the actual bot walks in afterwards, and Rick tries to get the cheer going as Morty watches the innocent kid bleed out on the ground. A crazy post-credit scene that fits perfectly. I've been enjoying the post-credit scenes a lot so far this season. This episode as a whole, though, felt really strong to me. I was happy to see the ratings pick back up after the dip last week. But that's it for this episode.
Morty!
All these little dogs were going to get killed, and now they're getting shuffled off to some other dimension that we will see sometime in Season 9.
I'm going to go abuse a dog today.
Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and it's honestly really funny they followed through on something so few people would have known about or remembered. It was another great episode, though. Calling back such an early character, I think, fits this season's vibes. The early ratings seem pretty strong, too, so let's hope it stays that way as we break the episode down. Starting with the title, which is obviously an Air Bud reference, but the episode itself only somewhat resembles that plot. In this case, the activity the dog is stepping up to play is breeding pets for specific extreme traits, the joke obviously being that if you find any of this off-putting or distasteful, then you should also find it off-putting or distasteful in dogs. More than Air Bud though, the episode is actually parodying 2 other movies, going along with Dan Harmon's rule about only doing parodies if it's 3 or more properties. The other 2 are Lucy, Jerry's storyline being an alternate version of how ScarJo's titular character gets the drugs into her system, then progressively becomes more and more affected by the substance represented by a percentage that in the movie represents how much of her brain she's using, but in the show represents what percentage of Jerry is worms. Pretty direct reference in how they do the percentages though, and secondly is Planet of the Apes with how the humans are pets. Also kind of Fantastic Planet too, I guess. The episode opens on the Beths having breakfast cereal together in a shot similar to this one in last season's Kid Beth episode. I kind of wish they had made it the same kind of cereal, to be honest. Jerry's nervous about a job interview, so Space Beth offers him some worry worms, which she says she's on right now. And she acts like it's just like being high, basically. Jerry doesn't want
Breakfast drugs? We doing breakfast drugs? Deal me in.
and Morty's on his way off to a sleepover with an unannounced friend. Jerry chooses to take a worry worm in the end while Rick self-burns.
Is this what it feels like to have friends?
Wouldn't know.
He tells Morty he'll pick him up on Sunday, and we see Morty's entered Snowball's dimension from the end of Season 1, Episode 2, who, if you recall, was sent with all his smart dog friends over to this new dimension. After his statue, there's also these back here, which depict Snowball carrying another dog who seems to have died. We can see they really have changed the designs of Rick's mech suits. When it cuts to this angle of Snowball greeting Morty, there's this fountain back here of Snowball peeing. In the close-up, we see they even updated the speaking thing. We cut to a statue of Snowball entering the dimension through the portal. Morty admires it in front of a food cart selling chicken chews in plastic bags. I think this is a federal building. It says Canis Unum, which I think is just supposed to be poor Latin for all dogs are one. This little chihuahua with glasses has a newspaper that says Who Let the Mups Out, obviously a play on Who Let the Dogs Out, because they call the pet humans mups. This little guy's carrying a suitcase shaped like a bone. Morty's impressed with the monorail, which you can see doesn't have windows so that the dogs can hang their heads out as it goes. Morty's suddenly attacked by a mup. The same mup we see at the end is on the conference call with Jerry. He play stabs Morty with a toy spear before his owner picks him up and carries him away as Snowball approaches, explaining the mups are pet humans they bred from the species that lived here. And he's worried Morty's going to judge them, but Morty says he's seen much worse, which is definitely true. We see another mup playing with a toy spatula, always with the human toys, but the dog walking him is definitely based on this little one-eyed guy from the crew dog shot at the end. I will point these out when I'm 100% sure, but most of the dogs are not in that shot. This giant mustache one back here is hilarious. I also love how his tongue's hanging out and how he has a spiky collar, whereas this guy has a harness. Snowball keeps talking about the mups, but Morty keeps refocusing on hanging out and how he doesn't care. We cut to them riding in the limo, and I love how the crosswalks are grass and have this robo-suit crossing sign. From inside the limo, we get a few frames of a fire hydrant they turned into a urinal, which is pretty funny. The thing this dog is playing fetch with is a toy smartphone. Snowball keeps talking about the mups, so Morty asks if they can just head back to his place and hang out. On their way in, the security huts are like mini dog houses. His gate also has a doggy door flap, which is funny. He's got a Snowball vanity plate too. The butler offers Morty a martini water bowl thing. We also see Snowball has kept his same second in command all this time, but some feral mups jump the fence, security darting them as they tackle Morty. Snowball again just keeps talking about how Morty must be judging them, despite Morty again just saying he doesn't care. He tasks one of his guys with taking Morty to the mup facility to prove their process is humane. We cut back to Jerry in his interview. The only meaningful detail in this guy's office is the picture of his wife, who we do meet later. Jerry acts super laid back, impressing the interviewer, and we smash cut to the 10% thing from Lucy. Jerry asks if they're working on any major marketing clients, and the guy says Nip Slip Vodka, and that if they land the account, they'll be doubling their revenue. Jerry recommends the slogan, Drink Nip Slip, which is terrible, but the guy is just impressed by everything laid back Jerry does, so he loves it. The interview invites Jerry to the client meeting with Nip Slip's CEO, who's named
Carl Nip Slip.
Kinda makes me think of this. this.
We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
But the meeting is that night, and we cut to a laid-back Jerry jamming out to the terrible It's Friday song with lots of worm vials on the dash. He parks on the lawn, and a bunch more vials fall out as he gets up. The Beths come out worried he's overdoing it on the worms. Rick hilariously joins by portaling from the garage to the lawn. He scans Jerry, finding the worms have started eating his insides. Rick says he doesn't know anything about the worms, but SB says they can go to her dealer. We cut to the Mupp and Me Adoption Center, where the bushes and some architecture are bone-shaped. Inside, there's little human footprints as a trail, the way some places do little paw prints. We see a vending machine for pup formula, premium, organic, hypoallergenic, non-GMO. All the buzzwords the same way the pet brands do. There's a clothes shelf here with a banner above it next to a hats shelf whose banner has a Dr. Seuss hat.
On the front desk, this coffee cup says World's Best Pooch, and there's a paw scanner and a slobbery tennis ball. They keep trying to excuse it all, and Morty finally comments they seem really ashamed of it all, but that he really doesn't care. They make him watch an educational video about it all, including an editor where you can select traits for your Mupp, including big ears, docile, light coat, hairless, male or female, then show a Mupp getting morphed to fit someone's requests, a mother crying for her baby, and all the while using cheery music and flowery transitions as the juxtaposition, the same way we really do act about our dogs, despite the fact that what we have done as a species to them, to breed them into the shapes they are, it's insane. It finally makes Morty feel uncomfortable, and they fail to cheer him up with his own Mupp, so we cut to him packing up his stuff at Snowball's mansion. There's an indoor fire hydrant with a monogrammed Snowball hand towel, a painting of when they arrived, and a treat jar next to one of those martini pet bowl cups. The bed is a giant dog bed complete with decorative bones etched into the wood. Snowball comes in excited and tail wagging until Morty says he's leaving and his tail falls down. Morty says bye, and from this angle we see the flower vase is full of chewing ropes. There's more toys down here next to some steps up to the bed, and a painting of a scenic fire hydrant. Snowball asks Morty to stay, insisting again that he's judging them too harshly, but Morty says they're still friends and he just wants to go home. He gets in the limo and the driver starts moving while Morty starts mumbling,
"Please don't try to kill me, please don't try to kill me, please don't try to kill me."
But they get hit by another car and surrounded, so Morty runs for it. We see a tag for the Squirrel Mafia. I assume that's about this.
We need a quorum to pick a new pope in case the Exxon Monsanto thing falls through in Africa. That kid is watching us. Hey kid, young man, come here, little boy.
Oh fuck! Oh fuck! Fuck me! Fuck me!
Oh shit, Morty, what did you do? All right, Morty, pack your shit. You fucked with squirrels, Morty. We got a good 5 minutes before they're backing up on our ass, Morty. We have to pack up and move to a new reality, Morty. We're fucked over here because of these damn squirrels, Morty.
These weird vines are growing out of this building? He's approached by a few Mupps, but the feral ones show up and kill the pet ones. Afterwards, they approach Morty. We can see a tearaway flyer back here for poop. They say they want to take Morty, who responds saying he doesn't want to be part of any movement, but they drag him off anyways. We cut to everyone else but Summer, who seems to be completely absent this episode, as they portal into a seedy apartment hallway filled with glass cases containing various nondescript creatures. SB gets them through the door to her dealer, Sweet Marie, whose apartment is also full of nondescript creatures we can only assume she's also using for drugs, and specifically an alien cat and an alien parrot that are pretty sick looking. But SB tells Sweet Marie that Jerry's being overtaken by worms, and Marie just offers to split the profit from selling Jerry's new worms. They don't like the answer, so she calls in her security because she wants all the worms for herself, and everyone starts fighting, accidentally freeing the parrot, which good for that parrot. I hope this is its home world. Also, that little beak-having fish is cute. This little guy back here is the only one that moves around a bunch, and it's pretty cute. It kind of seems like it's trying to communicate. We'll get back to that later. Rick shoves Jerry out of the way, which for a split second, Sweet Marie actually looks worried for him, but probably just for the merchandise. Rick robo-arms her away as SB casually tosses him a blade, showing that his connection with Morty is not entirely unique. She might not be on the same level yet, but you do never know. Maybe she'll have her own portal color one day. Rick goes in for the kill, but she catches his arm, so he uses her as a bullet shield when the other guy starts shooting. SB complains her favorite dealer is dead and kills the shooter, and then in under 6 seconds this whole little story takes place, starting with Beth keeping this guy's gun aimed away from herself. The little crab guy signals to her with its claws. She sees and understands, grabs a a pipe and breaks the glass to free it, and it attacks the guy, and after killing him, I think it was jumping not to attack Beth,
but to like ride her as a new friend, since it signaled to her first again, but Rick gets it with SB's knife, pinning it to the wall. He then grabs the blade for SB, and they realize Jerry made a run for it at some point since he doesn't want to give up the worms. They track him to a nearby subway where Rick says his tracker signal died, probably because the worms ate it. There's a guy sleeping, and instead of waking him up to ask if he's seen anything, Rick stabs him in the head with a memory display gun, which is pretty sick, and just another entry into Rick's many memory-based devices. They see that Jerry was acting weird in front of everyone. Rick says because the worms feed on anxiety and putting him in these situations makes him anxious. And they all realize he must be headed to the client meeting he had mentioned earlier. Also, I'm pretty sure Rick killed this guy. We see the feral humans dragging Morty into their nesting area. These kids are playing with the skull, and this lady is carrying her baby on her back like many primate species do. They drag him in front of their leader, a lady with a cool shawl thing and neckerchief. She speaks perfect English, and when Morty is relieved that they have a leader and says he doesn't want to get involved, she criticizes him for sitting on the sidelines. I guess they have sports since they have sports idioms. She tries to talk about the horrific lives they have, but Morty cuts her off saying he knows because he watched the Mupp video. She says about his use of the word Mupp,
Mupp is the language of the oppressor! You're still trapped in their way of thinking.
and this is the perfect moment to talk about, I guess, the larger message they're trying to send with this episode, obviously aside from the commentary on dog breeding, because the way they had her phrase that, like asserting that he was trapped in a way of thinking rather than the obvious reality of him just being indifferent to suffering at this point.
Colonization, eugenics, hierarchies, above my pay grade.
Her phraseology is kind of aggressive in order to get the idea that Morty is meant to represent to seem more reasonable, which they just outright say in the end of the episode.
I never took a moral stance, though. I resisted it.
Really?
Couldn't pin me down to nothing. Totally sidelined it.
Because in this situation, he represents what Rick does a lot of the time and what the creators behind the show definitely feel is core to their own identities. The idea that you can just not have a stance on something as an excuse, basically. They would never call it an excuse, that would be hurtful to them, but I've listened to, I believe, all of the available creator commentaries on the show, as well as a lot of the creators' other interviews and stuff, and they really do feel that way. It's why they even have Rick use the R slur and immediately justify it by having him say he values the differently abled, but just likes the word. Like they're trying to be removed from the conflict while maintaining a moral superiority about it, but that's just not how that works. You can't be fully aware of a societal problem, choose not to care about it, and still pretend to have moral superiority. You want to live your life the way you want to, without having to think about how other people less lucky than you might be suffering because it's easier for you to live that way. You want to use the word you like without thinking that maybe the family member of someone your slur applies to might be nearby and hurt by your words. And I get it, it's easier to ignore problems like this and convince yourself you've got nothing to do with it, and that activists are actually annoying for making you feel a little uncomfortable. That is easier than caring. Caring sucks. But don't hide behind the bullshit like this. Just say you don't care and own it for what it is. It's one of the few areas I don't love Harmon's take on personally, and kind of feels like opposite some of his life lessons he's learned over the years, but whatever. They wind up being found by the dogs and attacked though, while Morty overhears Snowball on comms telling his second in command to find Morty because he called them racist bigots. Which was obviously not true, and is just them again trying to hammer home the point that you can choose to be removed from an issue, and people saying you're bigoted in some way are just crazy. That's why they're having both sides of the conflict say the same things about Morty for wanting to stay out of the issue. I really think the writers view themselves as like above it all, like nobody criticize us at all because we refuse to take a stance outside of the stance that we're allowed to do or say whatever we want. That's the one stance we definitely have. It's not even a real world view. It's why in philosophy there are so many terms like the myth of neutrality or the neutrality fallacy or moral equivalence. Our choices, our actions are all we have. Sitting on the sidelines will always inherently benefit one side more than the other. Like Theodore Roosevelt said, as for neutrality, it is well to remember that it is never moral and maybe a particularly mean and hideous form of immorality. But anyways, the leader winds up dying, and out of anger for being called a bigot, Morty kills the guy Snowball was talking to. As the leader dies, she tells Morty, who tries to hide from the responsibility, that he's in charge now. Morty says,
Kill that dog guy die because I'm pissed at Snowball, not because of your conflict.
Just to drive home his neutrality again, I guess. He gets in the robo-suit and the Ferals follow suit. He calls Snowball to tell him he's coming for him and launches an attack. We cut to that night as the nesting area is in shambles and they're planning an attack on Snowball's mansion. Morty screams some more about not being their leader and being neutral before we cut to Fancy's steakhouse, where Jerry just arrived for the client meeting. They smash cut 60% worm and Jerry introduces himself charmingly. He makes fun of this guy's toupee and orders them martinis, but it works. The guy loves him and says he'll sign the paperwork, but Jerry has to meet his board of directors first. They get on the CEO's jet where Jerry's piloting the plane and made his new boss bring his pregnant wife. Jerry rolls the plane and destroys the controls before telling his new boss's wife he's induced her labor and is going to deliver her baby on the crashing plane, which makes her fall in love with him somehow. She has the fastest birth in human history and names her Jerry, and the plane crashes. Meanwhile, Morty's mid-battle and gets the idea to recruit the Mups from the adoption factory place, so we cut back to the security desk in there we saw earlier, but from this angle we see the nameplate which says Snarf Security. The puppy's watching like a traditional native type dance, but with dog toys, which is hilarious, but Morty and the Ferals break in to free all the Mups and give them weapons, but they just wind up hurting each other with them, Morty realizing his mistake right as the dogs catch up with them. So they head deeper into the facility and break out the back before we cut to them breaking through Snowball's front gate and smashing down his front door. Morty confronts him and they duke it out with a lot of Snowball's face all over the place and one statue of him riding a pig like a horse. They fight until Morty finally destroys his robo-suit with this meditating statue of Snowball back here. The guy really is obsessed with himself. Morty takes him out to the front of the mansion to speak to the fighters. He manages to get them to stop and listen, and they ask him to lead, but he says no, so they start fighting again. So Snowball guides him to their panic room, and we cut back to the crashed plane where Jerry takes his newfound Colt up to a water tower. He undresses and makes the other men do the same. It smash cuts to 100%, and Jerry starts vomiting, telling his minions to eat them. Rick, driving SP's ship, crashes into the water tower.
He goes to help Jerry, but the minions stop him, saying Jerry's perfect and that he's hired and has the new Nipslip account too. As a result, his anxiety starts decreasing, and since the worms feed on anxiety, they start dying off. So they rush out of him and towards Rick, who apparently is nervous about Jerry not being around as much if he gets a job. Rick grabs the newly worm-free Jerry and his two followers and tosses a cool bubble machine out to trap the worms as they fly off to safety. The guys tell Jerry again they'll see him Monday for his new job and walk off before we cut to Morty and Snowball in his panic room, where we see a bunch of toys, a fire hydrant, and those gravity feeders. They talk it out, Snowball admitting he's ashamed of the human breeding, and Morty saying humans are ashamed of their breeding of dogs, but that they don't need to hate each other about it all. They walk out of the panic room as Rick portals in, asking why everything is destroyed. Morty explains and says,
Totally sidelined it.
Good boy.
I love how Rick tussles his hair like a puppy, like he's trained him to be this way, which, yeah, is true. This season is pretty focused on their dynamic. I definitely feel like it's leading up to something. Morty asks if there's anything they can do here, though, and Rick suggests selling them the worms to eat their shame, which I guess won't explode like they did with Jerry because he was too full of anxiety. So now the dogs and the humans get along, thanks to drugs. After the credits, we see Jerry in his new office,
where we see they really did use the drink vodka slogan. There's a picture of the family with Rick walking away, and the Hungry for Apples slogan from the Season 1 simulation episode. Lastly, we see he's on a conference call with the dog dimension where everyone gets along now because they're on worms all the time. So let's break the episode down, starting, as always, with the title, Ericerhead, a play on Eraserhead, which, aside from the wordplay and the head falling off scene, has nothing to do with the plot or the meaning of the episode. It's a surrealist horror about the loss of identity to parenthood and being stuck in a corporate society. There's definitely identity generally at play in this episode, but it's entirely focused on, like, carnal impulses, not corporate society and parenting. The episode opens on Rick chugging a beer in an alien beer garden, confused why Morty and Summer aren't having more fun. In the background, we can see that they have an alien version of Jean-Francois Millet's The Gleaners, a very famous painting depicting the working class that sparked controversy among the upper class. There's also a couple of these elephant deer mounted heads and a beer vat. There's a bunch of nondescript cups up here mixed with a bong, ayo. After the meal, the kids help a stumbling Rick out of the buffet, where there's a statue of a guy holding a beer over some wheat, I think. A funny looking car in this alien parking lot. Summer says Morty has the ship's keys, while Rick opens a portal saying he wants a new stomach. Summer gets pulled through the portal as Rick drunkenly stumbles in before poking his head back, cause Morty thinks they should get the ship instead of portaling. Rick drunkenly argues until the portal closes around his neck, chopping his head off and the portal gun in half. After the theme, we see Summer's perspective. Behind her are some nondescript robot parts, and back here an eyeball container with tongs to fish them out. Summer finally realizes what happened, and we cut to Rick growing some neck bags to breathe with. Rick's body's defenses activate and say,
"This body has 7 nuclear devices. Please retreat to range of
14 miles. Which, accurate. Relative safety for most modern nukes is about 15 miles, I think, though still stay undercover and don't look at the blast. I've covered Rick's new ringtone 3 times this season, I won't mention it again, but Summer grabs his phone and pulls out her own. We see some contact names, but no puns or familiar faces. She calls Morty and asks how to disable the body's self-destruct. Rick walks her through disabling it, but she accidentally causes the body to say,
tear ducts on,"
which implies they were off, which implies he'd otherwise be crying, which is really sad. She manages to disable the self-destruct though, only for Rick to tell her she's in a dangerous part of town and to head to his local contact shop for safety. This one sign is English, even though all the others are alien letters. Morty tells her he can't find the ship keys, and she says she found them in Rick's pocket as she starts to panic, but Rick says she's on the same planet as them and it'll be fine, just to head to his contact's shop. When she closes his back, we get a cool shot of the internals, but I've stared at it for way too long. Outside of the obvious spine going through the center, it's all just random pieces of technology crammed together with some red gunk on it. While she's closing it, she accidentally activates a parachute and a hairdryer mirror combo so Rick can keep his hair looking good. She shoots one of his shoes off and a crowd of people start gathering talking about wanting the expensive body. They chase her down the street where we see a sign for bodybuilding, good pun, and the hip spot with a hip bone, even better pun. Summer rocket shoes the bad guys and reloads the leg like a shotgun, which doesn't make sense since the shoes were the bullets, but whatever. As she keeps running, there's a sign for Bodies, 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 a relatively new and popular movie. She manages to turn the body into a scooter to make her getaway. We also see a random open sign and another human on this alien planet before cutting to Morty and Rick's head at a doctor's office. They make a joke out of Morty wiping away Rick's usually permanent spit spot. The doctor asks Morty if he's sure he wants to give his body to Rick's head, which surprises Morty, and the doctor randomly decides he must be Rick's kidnap victim, calling security and causing them to have to make a run for it. Morty chucks Rick into a cab and tells the cabbie to gun it, as we see they were at Shrab Medical. The writers clearly realize the bit they're going for hasn't been set up enough, so we get some forced exposition about how different Rick feels without his body, and right now specifically his pickle. But Cab TV suddenly comes on with an emergency notice about Rick and Morty, so they have to knock the cabbie out before we cut back to Summer, who's made it to Rick's friend Seb's buy, fix, sell body parts. Inside, there's a lot of robotic parts lying around and alien signs, but nothing specific. Seb introduces himself thinking he's Rick's best friend. Summer, inviting trouble, tells him he's just the stomach guy. He asks if Rick has any other body part mechanics, and Summer, again inviting trouble, says yes and insults his neighborhood. They take the body in the back, but when he tries to access it, it freaks out and suddenly starts acting like it's alive out of nowhere. Seb installs a sensory array on top of the neck so that the body will be able to see again. And going forward for the rest of the episode, the body is treated like its own person, with its own personality, desires, and opinions, which this is one of those ones where you shut the critical thinking part of your brain off and just enjoy the ride, and that's fine. So the body is a person now, and we cut to Morty driving them away from the cops and towards a tech store, because Rick says he needs parts parts to work with, so they crash into a tech store, and again, I did what I always do for these. Each scene I pause and look at every inch, and while there are lots of vague background tech pieces throughout the episode, there are very few that are references or jokes or anything. Morty threatens the shopkeep into giving them tech, and we cut back to Summer and Rick's body as all her crap talking comes back to bite her. Seb brought guys in because he wants Rick's body too because it's worth so much. Summer makes her escape, and for a sec this guy is wearing one of those spinning top hats. Now that the body can see, it can fight again. They run past a street performer and a homeless guy with a sign that says "Will work for limbs." They get chased onto a subway where they have to fight, and Summer literally turns this big guy's robot arm from on to off, under which he has a little arm. They kill a few more guys before getting knocked out of the train, but climbing to the roof. They keep fighting all the cyborg bad guys and the fist bump afterwards, making a run for it as soon as they reach the next stop, but the main guy is still chasing them until Rick gives him a weird massage and hug, which fixes everything. When Summer questioned why that worked, it just hugs her too, and we cut to Morty and Rick's head eating various chips and stuff as the cops surround the store. Summer calls Rick, who ate the phone, and says to meet them at the spaceport. He then tells Morty he's eaten enough tech and to aim him at the cops so he can laser eye them. But Morty says he doesn't want to kill anyone, and Rick agrees. Morty acts surprised, so Rick can again hammer home that this is because he doesn't have his body to give him bloodlust. So Morty aims him, and he uses his lasers to just knock out the cops. He then connects to the planet's internet and hacks the police computers to end their chase, referencing GTA, saying,
You just killed our GTA rating!
So they get on a plane to meet Summer at the spaceport, like Rick said, and he cries at the movie Tenet, which is fine as a movie, but I don't know about cry-worthy. Plus, isn't the emotional stuff supposed to be the body's purview? Anyways, their plane lands, and we cut to Summer waiting inside with the body, who has written her an emotional note saying that while he's all heart and no brain, he wants her to know he loves her and believes in her. Morty and Rick deboard, and Rick grows a little robot body to walk to his body, and they do the classic run at each other side angle shot like it's a happy reunion. But of course it turns out they hate each other now, each blaming the other for all their problems. The fight moves outside, and we cut to Summer and Morty in the ship talking to Rick's head on the phone, who's saying he's just gonna get a new body and move on, letting the other body do whatever it wants. He hangs up and goes to this other body mechanic, Rachel, who he clearly has a crush on. And it turns out the body is already there. He blames the body for ruining the friendship with Rachel, who now doesn't want to see either of them, and they start fighting, with Rick's head opening with the first of two semi-familiar attacks from his fight with Evil Morty in the season premiere. I know it's not exact, but it's the same size and feels like his take on it, at least to me. But the fight moves directly into, I think, a refinery of some sort, where Rick's head blames the body for all the drinking and sex and stuff, and the body indicates that it blames the head for all the problems. Rick's head attacks the body, trying to take it back over using hardened hair tips, but ultimately losing his little robot insect body. He then uses this scream attack that to me feels vaguely reminiscent of Evil Morty's wave attack in the season premiere, again like his take on it, but it has no effect on the body, so Rick's head rolls off the walkway, laser-eyeing himself onto some kind of lever and hacking into the console it's attached to, using one of the facility's arms to move himself to the main control area, where he attacks the body with everything the facility has, but the body using the break glass in case of emergencies shirt pocket as a bit to power up before doing this great one-shot that ends with the body knocking down the control station. He pretty hilariously bargains with himself, promising to eat clean and stop drinking, and just before the body's about to kill him, he offers him something that we don't get to hear. Yes, I isolated the audio and checked the captions. No, we don't know what he said. So despite the joke Summer makes that they seem to leave as the canon, I feel the same way about this as I do about the fear hole, now also about it maybe still being Ted from the vacation episode, and finally now that maybe Rick offered to take turns basically, and that the body gets an extra long turn first up or something. I don't know, I'm not saying it's likely, just saying they did leave a little room for suspicion in all these episodes for a reason, probably just to mess with us, but you never do know. It'd be hilarious if in one episode we find out that for several episodes or seasons it was Rick's body's new brain who was actually Ted's body's new brain, who was actually just experiencing the fear hole, who was actually still on the story train. But anyways, we cut to Summer and Morty waiting for the head and body, who went into an office for some reason. Eventually a unified Rick comes comes out with a pretty peaceful look on his face. Obviously, like I showed in the opening, Summer calls him out on blowing himself. His face seems to confirm it, and I do think it's the canon, but like I said, maybe it's not. They finally leave the planet and get back home. Rick decides he's going on a health kick, and we get a series premiere callback of him kicking the door in and dragging Morty out. This outfit, by the way, the same one he has on when he and Summer beef up to fight the devil. Summer and Morty are miserable when they train, and then we get that shot from this season's theme song of Rick in Space Olympics. When the kids finally admit they hate this too, Rick boasts it as proof that working hard for stuff sucks too, so they head back to the beer garden to stuff their faces. After the credits, we see Rick tease Morty with the head through the portal thing to show him he fixed it so that it can no longer do that, and they parody the "That's all folks" sign off. So let's break the episode down, starting with the title, which is a reference to Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, an awesome movie that, aside from being in a magical forest where a bad guy winds up trapped in a tree, has nothing to do with the plot of the episode, which actually references elements from so many movies: Lion King, Interstellar, Pocahontas, Shawshank Redemption, definitely Spore the game, and possibly Evolution, just because of the 3-eye guy and the whole going from amoebas to mammals thing. Basically the same reason it's related to Spore. It's weak though, and I'll point out the other stronger ones out when we get to them. The episode opens on a planet next to a black hole, which is the main area where they're pulling from Interstellar, which is the most famous property that has used gravitational time dilation, a real phenomenon predicted by the general theory of relativity, to have a character spend years on a planet next to a black hole while only hours passed for the people on Earth. Which is what happens here. They are trapped for what is clearly years, possibly centuries or millennia, and at the end, Summer says,
"Where have you two been all day?"
Not that this is new for them, they've experienced a litany of different kinds of time dilation, but they fly over some very Earth-like forest. Rick's got a vague scanner screen up on the planet. We pan down to see some mildly alien plant life. This one's got a bug in it, which is cool. They do this awesome transition from the ship having flown off screen to them suddenly hoofing it through the forest with a handheld scanner and energy machetes. They reach the giant tree Rick was scanning for and start harvesting the primo sap they're here for. A classic setup for the series. Rick takes Morty to get some valuable substance and then something goes wrong. Describes like 20% of all the episodes, but the tree wraps its vines around them and pulls them up to its face, calling them spacefarers and indicating he doesn't like those. The tree itself is obviously like the Pocahontas tree. That and the entire living off the land theme they wind up landing on are the big Pocahontas nods. Anyways, it says spacefarers consume their planets and then spread their disease to other stars, explaining why he doesn't like them, although we learn at the end he feeds off of his little microbiome's deaths. And since he also says this entire planet was his retirement plan, he must also be a spacefarer, plus he's torturing all these people, so he is a hypocrite, although he is also right, because everyone here but Morty was here for resources. But anyways, the tree drags them underground where they suddenly have a visible aura around them. Blue for Rick, yellow for Morty. The tree absorbs them and two little orbs fly out of their disintegrating bodies. It's a long and cool sequence, but I went inch by inch, frame by frame, and there's no extra detail as they descend into the hollow planet, which seems to get its light from the energy orbs flowing up into the tree and seems to go on for a while. Their orbs get dumped out of a root and into this body of water where they morph into amoeba, and Morty freaks out, but Rick says the sap is worth it, revealing that it's a drug. This guy approaches them, describing the place as a prison. The voice actor is also doing his best Morgan Freeman impression, and they gave him his freckles out of a reference to Morgan Freeman's Shawshank Redemption, which takes place in a prison like this, and has a similar escape to that scene with Morty. He explains there's no way out. This amoeba is doing curls. He does a Morgan Freeman style monologue about prison life before suddenly attacking Morty, killing him. Rick goes in this first time with just a big lump, which fails as a weapon. This guy's new arm is spiral tipped, which is sick. They reincarnate though, and Rick learns from his failed club shape, this time opting for like a sharp hook tip to tear through the guy's body, calling him a spawn camper like in any PvP shooter where annoying people just wait aiming down sights at the spawn sites. But Rick kills him and they eat his body before we see them apply this world's rules. You can willpower your own evolution, which is an amazing concept. I love it. They evolve up to fish and climb ashore, evolved into amphibious species. Rick loves breathing air finally, but Morty, being a lungfish which has both gills and lungs, can't figure out how to breathe as they walk through the the forest. There's a snake and a sneaky creature watching them. We get a funny circle of life bit to make Morty nervous. Another couple sneaky guys watch as Rick gets annoyed Morty is suffocating. He winds up dying, and it's a recurring bit they do during this compilation where Morty can't fully adapt to the new body and it keeps killing them. For half a second at the beginning of this compilation, Rick looks confused as he watches a bunch of flies who seem to be flying to the middle for some reason. They never do anything with that, but Morty can't use his body well enough to not stick to the webs, plus he doesn't do what Rick does and real spiders do, which is try to only use the scaffolding parts of the web, which they use non-stick silk for. But Morty tries to pull himself off of it using Rick, which obviously leads to them getting trapped. So a fly makes a great joke for the 90% of you who know flies like feces.
Not so fun, is it?
It's shit!
I'm gonna!
They respawn again, this time making it to birds. Again, in all these environment shots, I do go frame by frame, there just aren't any noteworthy details back there for these scenes. Rick says being a bird is like astral projection, because you can go anywhere but can't do anything without hands. Say that to nests. But the tree kills them, and then we get a Lion King reference in how they do this little montage. Rick says they're gonna need to make some tech, and Morty is happy to have hands again. Afterwards, they head to a watering hole for apes, which makes them hostile, but Rick kills a bunch of them and the leader to take control of them. But not before Morty dies, Rick saying this time he'll find him once he has a way out. So Morty respawns on his own and this time is greeted by the guy who winds up marrying number 3 hyena/gorilla. He basically tells Morty in a very preachy way to submit to nature and just be part of the life cycle, because that's how the warden, aka the tree, will let them leave. We then see Morty as a bee, pollinating and working in the hive, where the others keep saying this kind of natural work will please the warden enough to get them out stuff. But suddenly a giant gorilla with a satchel, meaning he's working for Rick, breaks the hive and collects the honey, killing Morty and his new friends, who respawn saying to just jump back into their next animal so they can get closer to being free. Which is a good spot to talk about one of the underlying themes here, which is obviously exploitation, one of many themes they take on in this episode, because we eventually learn that the tree actually wants everyone to constantly be dying because it's how he feeds on them. It's what the orbs and the roots are, and there's this fanatical base that insists that in order to be free, they just have to keep being part of nature no matter how uncomfortable it is. We later see that fraternization between predator species and prey species isn't allowed by this weird religion either, and as long as they don't try to escape, which always requires supposedly unnatural behavior, the warden doesn't kill them himself, which is somehow positive, despite dying all the time. And when one of them manages to make it back out through perfectly natural means by being the only prisoner to choose to become plant life, and he even assumes that the lesson was to respect nature and that now he is free, but the tree says no, there's no lesson, he's still prisoner because the tree gets fed every time someone dies. So it's just pure exploitation. The tree is not better than anyone, and this isn't even his original planet, and the odds are he's accused spacefarers of draining their planets because he did that himself. Anyways, we cut to a buffalo dead in a hole with some gorillas tricking some wolves into going after it, only to trap them and tell them they work for Rick now. We cut to Rick's camp around the base of the tree where he's drinking fermented berry wine and says it's time to launch the attack. We see a slave blacksmith making a base for a wagon. Rick tells all the slaves that they're gonna die trying different methods of escape so he can study it, and this is Gorilla 3, later Hyena 3, who winds up married to the religious guy Morty's hanging out with right now. I also love the turtle shell shoulder pads. He makes it some way up but dies to acid, which Rick writes down on his stone tablet before ordering everyone else to try to climb as well. One guy gets launched into the tree's hole? Another guy crashes an aerial screw like Da Vinci drew. Since nothing works, Rick tries cutting it down instead, which does finally get the tree's attention, who moves its face down to confront them, regrowing itself over the saw and breaking the wagons pushing the saw. Rick then tries burning it, but it just makes it rain. We cut back to Morty, who's now a clam with his friends, and they do a little compilation of several animals as Morty keeps commenting that all they ever do is eat shit or make shit. During the compilation, they do this time skip that seems to imply that possibly thousands of years have passed by. Morty becomes more and more disenchanted with just going with the flow like the other prisoners. Finally, as a turtle, Morty has too many doubts despite his friend reminding him following nature's path over and over without question is how they please the warden. He responds,
A reformed reformed prisoner is someone who doesn't want to leave the prison?
Which is commentary not on the prison system exclusively, but on basically any system, including some prisons, mainly for-profit prisons, but it's much more general commentary, continuing the perfect metaphor that the modern economy is essentially built around this type of relationship between a company and its employees. Most working class people, yeah, in America, but also across the globe today, are just stuck eating shit day in and day out so that someone much more powerful and in control can get more power and control. All the while, that power is usually telling them in order to have the same degree of freedom as them, they have to keep their head down and eat that shit like you're thrilled to do so, dangling the hope of a better life somewhere vaguely in the future in front of us as our only motivator. It's a strong commentary for sure, and the grandiose nature of the world is a perfect metaphor for the almost religious nature of most workplace cultures today. So holier than thou, and the guy convincing you to keep eating shit is usually eating just as much shit as you.
Well, you know where to find us. We'll be eating shit.
So Morty decides he'd like to finish this life on his own. His friend says to rejoin them whenever he wants, and they part ways. He got the idea after seeing a vegetable to be vegetation, and nobody else has ever been vegetation, so he wants to try. He starts as an algae bloom and transitions in this beautiful long shot through a million different plants, slowly overtaking the entire area as plant life, and growing slowly up the tree as bodies continue falling and stacking up. Another perfect metaphor because we see him feeding a bunch of animals and stuff, so instead of eating each other, he's more focused on supporting each other and growing a network. Just a different way to interact with the world. I think younger generations are kind of like that. Like, a lot of jobs ask you to take advantage of people, and younger generations, they just don't want to do that anymore. Or at least I feel like a smaller percentage of the younger generations want to do that kind of stuff. And he represents another type of lifestyle, a community supportive lifestyle. It's just great commentary on the difference between Morty's personality and Rick's personality. Presumably though, this is happening over at least years, possibly decades, and he finally makes it back up to the top side of the planet, right next to the tree's face. They have this great revealing little back and forth.
So many nutrients in the soil up here.
The life cycles of the guilty provide nourishment.
But that's more of a byproduct than the point of all this, right?
So he knocks Morty back down, killing him, not just that part of Morty, but all of Morty. Rick is watching it happen, and in the transition, there's this minor continuity error with the gorilla not being there before the cut. Rick dies, though, in order to restart alongside Morty again. He says he has an idea and grows into like a caveman before singing part of the Lion King Circle of Life song to a crowd of animals. Morty has grown back into plant life, and he asks everyone to eat his vegetation instead of each other in order to starve the tree of death. They move into a giant cave where Rick uses Morty as a staff, love that, also kinda Lion King-y. Everyone eats off of Morty as they do a time skip to show the outside world go barren without everyone out there eating each other. Is the commentary too obvious yet? Gorilla 3 and Religious Guy fall in love in a literal garden of Morty. We see they've started restaurants and become true chefs. Rick and Morty officiate Gorilla 3 and Religious Guy's wedding. The tree finally realizes it has to do something. He finds them in the cave and demands they start eating each other again, but finds the message, "Get bent." I think that's a tree joke, I just can't figure out how. But it turns out Morty was hiding everyone with plants, and they launch a surprise attack, harpooning the tree and anchoring it with Morty, getting him in the eye while a flanking team gets him at the base. They finally manage to tear him down, and he begs them to go back to eating each other as nature intended. He then tries to appease them by saying he didn't destroy anyone's ships, also setting up how everyone else gets off the planet for the post-credit scene. He finally dies, and they do this great bit where everyone asks how they're getting turned back into their regular bodies. Rick says to close their eyes so the magic can happen, and then sneaks away on a hot air balloon. We cut to them flying away and see that they took a bunch of the sap like Rick wanted. Cut to them back to normal. Summer asks where they've been all day, and they make a joke about Morty having learned nothing about biology. After the credits, we see Rick and Morty run into Gorilla 3, who made it off planet, but they pretend not to know him. We then see that he's still married to Religious Guy, which is cute. And that's all for this episode. Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and we just got another tease that our Morty, Morty Prime, is turning into Evil Morty.
Well, Dad's about to be killed by the police, so...
We can get another dad. What difference does it make? Nothing matters. So I'm you now. Quick, get me a kid so I can insult the shit out of him. Get over yourself, you dumb dead wife having...
And this isn't new either. They have been teasing us with this for so long.
Try her out. out.
What's it do?
Give me the car keys.
No, we're not leaving.
Yes, we are. Give them to me, you tanky scum. Now listen to me, you stupid old man.
Not only do we seem to be leading up to a second Evil Morty episode at the end of the season, but definitely something big with our Morty as well, especially since in a rare move, the creators titled the season finale a straight reference title, no forced Ricks or Mortys in there like they usually do, which feels like an indication that the episode is different somehow. It could be a reference to the main plot or not, but if it is, I'm kind of leaning towards Morty hearing voices telling him to do something, and maybe it turns out to be Evil Morty tricking him into helping him escape, or who knows, maybe it'll actually just be a really emotional episode about Morty and Rick. But this episode was amazing, if not slightly misguided towards the end in my opinion, but we'll get to that later. Making this 8 for 8, we are still on track for a perfect season, and the ratings agree, so let's break it down, starting with the title, which is a reference to Requiem for a Dream, which is lightly connected through the drug addiction theme and the hallucinations. If they are imitating the movie ending, though, it would mean that he actually hallucinated the bug coming out, and probably the functioning distillery for that matter too. But I doubt that's the case, just add it to the rabbit hole list I guess. It opens on a sleeping Rick. We finally get another full look at his room. On his table there's a bottle of Ukon no Chikara, a very popular Japanese anti-hangover supplement. It's funny that he uses it to take an unseen pill in the morning when you're supposed to take it before drinking. Although actually he does immediately start drinking, so never mind. There's also a copy of Being in Time by Martin Heidegger, which they depict him as being fond of, placing his bookmark with a satisfied smile, and I gotta say, honestly, this does not track with me, not for Rick as a character. Like, it'd be one thing to have him reading it smirking and making jokes or something, but seriously, Heidegger was famously a Nazi, like, until the war ended and after, and while people defended him for decades claiming he secretly wasn't and that Jewish people's accounts of their experiences with him were exaggerated, when his private diaries came out in 2014, it was confirmed, nope, he was a full Nazi. And I'm not saying we can't appreciate his work still, but to some degree, I mean, for the love of God, read the room, man. Plus, I read Being in Time. For one, to me at least, it's literally unfinished. The base philosophical question he sets out to answer, he said he'd answer in part 2, which he never wrote. The book is fine, and there are nuggets of wisdom in there for sure, but without diving too deep, I'll just say that even fans of it admit that it's kind of a mess, and he meanders way too much, and oftentimes leaves the realm of philosophy altogether. He inspired an unbelievable amount of work, though, ranging from arguing his points to defending to reframing, leading to a lot of today's modern philosophy, making him kind of a father figure, which is his real contribution to philosophy in my personal opinion. I think he was a little more famous for being controversial and novel than for having super well constructed ideas. And most importantly, Rick would never be a fan like this. Rick has always been depicted as an existential nihilist. Heidegger literally thought nihilism was part of the problem with society and despised being labeled an existentialist. And Rick doesn't struggle with not conforming to society. A big part of being authentic to Heidegger, Rick was never conformed to society. He doesn't need help with that. Heidegger thought technology was another of the big problems in society. Rick is basically living technology at this point. I honestly think one of the writers, or maybe the entire writer's room, was reading this when they wrote the episode. It's something I've noticed is consistent with a lot of Hollywood people. The Always Sunny gang was like this too during their podcast. They all really like philosophical stuff where there's something about how important it is to focus on yourself and not let other people drain you. Anything to soothe the thought that maybe they should do something more with their money and influence, I guess. Not that I'm attacking them, I'm a huge fan of all these shows. I just kind of find it entertaining that there seems to be a common theme in the type of philosophy they like. If we brighten the full bedroom shot, we see basically everything in here is as it usually is. The shot of Dr. Bloom from Jurassic Park, his ship, and a Meeseeks. There's a drawing of the sun, I think, that a kid drew, alongside some vague science notes. There's a planet and his gun, a blueprint for something. I thought maybe the Citadel for a second, but no, it's not. There's a Cronenberg from Prime's Dimension, Aberdolf Linkler from the season 1 finale, one of the Zygerians, the aliens who trapped Rick in a 3-layer simulation back in season 1, some kind of cylinder container I thought was like Evil Morty's from the season premiere, but it's different. From one shot you can also see behind Dr. Bloom is, I believe, his wife, who has been on the wall in past seasons next to Bloom, and finally some kind of space pod and parachute. For the most part, the connecting strings don't directly communicate anything, except for here where it's clear he found the Zygerian homeworld and he has some blueprints related to them. Lastly, there's a sticky note on a printer that I assume is an error code, but tiny chance it could be a dimension number? No hints as to where though. He takes an unseen pill though with the anti-hangover drink, and we cut to him sliding his lab coat on in the garage in a simple but really well animated clothing shot, which is harder than you'd think. He climbs down into the sub-basement and walks into his new distillery since losing his infinite liquor supply earlier this season. The room number 820, I can't find any special meaning about it. There is a distillery in the UK called 820, but I doubt it's a reference. He also obviously flips the do not disturb sign, so it actually is rude of Morty to interrupt if it's not an emergency, but he's also a kid, and what kid doesn't interrupt their family from time to time? We see his coffee maker where the alien coffee beans grow right there. The dispenser adds vodka to the cup before the freshly brewed coffee gets poured in. Coffee with vodka in it is his same order in the season premiere. We see he went to Big Whoopers, a play on Burger King's Big Whopper. This is just a word they made up, but the machine poops something edible, obviously reminding us of this. He selects B, but I am curious what L and D are. When he pulls it, we see the screen say meal food flavored. He eats some of whatever it is and holds on to the rest as he opens a drawer full of little creatures, but also some tapes, all 5 of which are from musicians or bands: Sun Ra, Genesis, Derek Moreau, Big Sis, and Gaslamp Killer. Pretty varied taste there, but I'm also guessing either some writers or animators put their own music tastes in here, which is cool. He feeds 2 of the little creatures next to issue 17 of Farm, the magazine. Pretty clever name. It turns out the critters fart music, so he pops them in like headphones and picks up the Glorpulist, which I'm sure is a pun on something, but I couldn't figure out what. Maybe The Economist? I don't think so. He opens it and we see a bunch of news stories: a squid alien with glasses, anarchy over an eyeball, an alien with one of those Russian hats next to a gun, a couple nondescript ones, Neil Postman, and it's a Lego guy? And finally, Oligarchy and You. We should all be reading up on that one. He pulls an options screen up and fortifies the anarchy and overthrows the oligarchy, casually controlling world events over here with aliens farting in his ear and coffee vodka in his cup. He tries a sample and adjusts some stuff. No details in these shots, but we see a box of one perfect Grimaldian potato, obviously an alien potato. He blends it, which actually is a step in making vodka. He jams out, eyes closed, while pouring it in, but Morty walks in with his pajamas, which we haven't seen since the Night Family episode, and I know it's part of the joke, but if that's all it took to destroy your entire distillery, then your distillery sucked, man. Smartest man in the galaxy, ladies and gentlemen. Creates accidentally reachable Death Star hole in his distillery. Rick's obviously furious. The sprinklers go off, matting his hair down. He screams at Morty, asking why he ignored the do not disturb sign, and Morty admits he wanted to ask if he could take him to the store for Pokemon cards. Something a kid would do, interrupt their grandparent to get a toy from the store. Obviously a little rude, but not worth screaming over. He pulls out this unbelievably vague happiness chart to prove being with Morty makes him unhappy, which, ridiculous. He made this in advance to hurt his grandson. It's hilarious, but also Rick's over 70 years old and he's been with this Morty technically no more than like 2 years. And a vague correlation like this, I mean, he could be seeking Morty out when he's feeling down. It is funny though. But Morty asks why they're even together then, and Rick responds,
"When I found you, you were bait. When I killed that fish, maybe I should have cut the line."
Which is a pretty messed up thing to say, and it ignores the value and uniqueness of their relationship that Rick himself has admitted even just earlier this season, but also as far back as season 1. So Morty correctly says,
You told me that wasn't true. You're just trying to hurt me.
Morty, no.
And we cut to Rick giving Summer a checklist of all real distilling equipment they're supposed to get for him in exchange for Summer buying some stuff for herself. And we kind of make out his ID in his wallet, mainly the hair spikes. He pulls up the location of the only other one of those rare alien potatoes, and it happens to be the prize on Dancing with the Stars. And are they owned by the same parent company?
Vertical integration.
I guess Rick counts as a star, so he needs Morty to dance as his partner. And to be clear, he barters in knowing that Morty last ran away from him crying, which is the same as a do not disturb sign unless you're coming in with an apology, which he's not. So as always, he's kind of being a hypocrite in the funniest possible way.
Please, God, oh Lord, hear my prayers. Yes! You, God, not today.
but he just demands that Morty come with him, but he's too upset, so Rick offers to make it so that Morty doesn't have to hear it when Rick yells at him. Obviously such a healthy solution, as he alludes to later on.
Maybe I leaned a little hard on the shortcut when I could have just talked to you.
Morty asks how he can make him not hear it when Rick is mean, and he just injects the sympathid into his ear, and the logic, just like the word choice, I found a little confusing, because it's called a sympathid after sympathy, but it absorbs empathy, which is a completely different thing, and releases something 1,000 times stronger than empathy, which they say is why he's experiencing the world differently. So I think the logic here is that it makes you hear what the person is attempting to communicate in whatever way is best for you to understand. Like the empathy makes you capable of understanding what someone's trying to communicate, even if it's hidden under 100 layers of aggression and disrespect or sarcasm. Which would mean that everyone's acting all nice because it's how Morty would prefer people to be, but say someone direct and stoic like Bird Person might experience a simpler, more direct form of communication. But that's only during the short period Rick allowed Morty to use it for. Once he dipped back in and the worm got stronger, it obviously had a much stronger hold on Morty's perception of reality, as shown in the post-credits scene. So Rick tells them they have to go on Dancing with the Stars, and they do a cool swipe transition with Morty's body. We then cut to them on the Dancing with the Stars stage, where they play the song they said they did in the episode. It's just part of the Godzilla score, which is honestly hilarious. They nail the dance, and we cut to them walking into the house with the potato prize Rick wanted. He removes the bug from Morty's brain, who immediately gets sad because Rick had been really nice for the last 12 hours, and apparently there's also a withdrawal according to Rick. From the actual storefront to Jerry saying it like 5 times, I assume they had a Home Depot sponsorship again. I looked closely at the stuff in the back, it's all just vague metal parts, nothing recognizable. It turns out the only thing they're missing are some drums, and they've checked every store in the area. They suddenly spot a serial killer loading a bunch of drums and his latest victim into the back of his windowless van. Jerry wants to call 911 to save the girl, but Summer, completely desensitized by Rick at this point, says they have to get the 60-gallon drums for Rick instead, making Jerry pretend he's also a serial killer and that Summer is his most recent victim in order to get close to the serial killer and steal his drums, who has some rope and duct tape in his van, obviously. He notices Jerry, who apparently parked in a handicap spot, not cool, and walks over to ask about the dead girl, voiced by Andy freaking Serkis, by the way, and I would be remiss not to point out that there's a second Home Depot back here. Not a continued wing, it cuts off a separate Home Depot. Jerry complains all he has for his victim is a rug and asks if he can buy a couple of the guy's drums, but he refuses to take more than the ticket price because he's a man of honor and invites Jerry back to his place, where he can make change for Jerry's 100. He gets back in the car to follow the guy home, saying they have to save the girl while Summer screams they have to get the drums. We cut back home where the district school bus is picking Morty up. Have we ever seen that before? I don't think we have. A blonde bully who looks like a 45-year-old yells at Morty that he's gonna bully him on the bus. So Morty injects the bug again, which is just sitting on the table. We cut to the bully crying that his family is living paycheck to paycheck, but his parents keep voting against their own interests, which at first I thought might be a vague political joke about Trump, but now I'm thinking might actually be a joke about President Curtis, whose spinoff is coming up after the season finale. Like right after the season finale. And I'll definitely be breaking it down, so make sure to subscribe. Maybe this new bully and his family will get featured? I think this part happened the way Morty experienced stuff with Rick, with just a gentler version of reality, but I think once he gets to school, everything he sees is no longer tied to reality. So the way the scenes happened were probably completely different, like the crying teacher in the post-credits scene. We see Goldenfold teaching the history of the founding of America with George Washington and his famous painting, some American ships, the flag, and a map. Morty interrupts the class and obviously gets fake praise for it. The principal walks up saying he wants to talk about how he was bullied in high school, definitely false reality at this point, especially since as the compilation begins, the very next scene is the one we see happened differently in the post-credits scene. He stops a fight between 2 lesbian hockey players, just guessing on the hockey part based on the outfits, but it means in reality he probably made it worse or got beat up himself. He does some gardening for some reason, I guess he's empathizing with everything now, but he fully hallucinates some super flowers. By the way, the song during the compilation is Thank You by Alanis Morissette. He imagines serving soup at a homeless shelter, dear god I wonder what this was, covering up some nondescript graffiti, then goes cloud gazing with Principal Vagina and a stranger, hallucinating magic clouds too. He tucks in a binge drinking Beth, and we cut back to Jerry, who's now at the serial killer's house, where we see he has cat food as well as the toys he uses in his rituals, so he must have some cats somewhere. He also seems to like corn, and he even has a cat calendar calendar. His home is a disgusting mess, but he brings out a pristine tea set for them to have some tea. He reaches next to his cookie jar for his victim's belongings jar in order to make change for Jerry's 100. Summer sneaks out of the car and sprints to the back of the house, and we see a tricycle on the lawn. She sneaks to his cellar where we see he has a memorabilia box and a photo of his mom, I assume. Summer grabs one of the heavy 60-gallon drums, but the girl he kidnapped from Home Depot starts screaming. This is obviously a Silence of the Lambs reference. I mean, he literally has a basket. Summer says she'll only help if she promises to help her carry the steel drum out to the car. The guy's got a bleach bottle and knife stuck through a newspaper into the wall. He asks Jerry what his signature is, saying he leaves cat toys in his victim's pockets, making him the cat and mouse killer. Jerry comes up with his ultimately stupid, but if it were real, definitely deranged birthday butcher routine where he kills people on their birthdays and does weird stuff to them afterwards. It's enough that the guy pulls out his phone and secretly calls 911, which is a really funny plot twist that the serial killer calls the cops. It kind of makes sense because he says he's doing it to hurt the parents by killing them on their birthday, and this guy seems to like have a connection with his mom based on the cellar portrait. Meanwhile, Rick is making progress rebuilding his distillery. Morty interrupts again, trying to apologize and offering to be more helpful basically, so they head out to some kind of plaza that has Cyclops bunny signs everywhere and a sideways parking lot. It's called Asteroid Plaza, but again, Morty is hallucinating all of this as we see later on, and it immediately doesn't make sense because why would he have to roll under a laser grid and disable it at a shopping mall? They reach the supposed store Rick wants a special thermostat from, and Morty hallucinates that an alien tells him to take it, which he does, and then he imagines a fun little blast character instead of seeing the security measures. Rick finally realizes what's going on and goes to suck the bug out, causing Morty's hallucination to break and reality to set in, and the bug is enormous now. We see they're actually in like a vague criminal underground area. Rick was probably planning on either buying or fail that stealing the thermometer, but Morty just walked up and grabbed it. Rick robot arms them to safety while yelling at Morty, who's suddenly extremely aggressive, making fun of Rick's dead wife. All the while, they work well together to reattach Morty's arm, which had been blown off by the bomb earlier. Rick uses a little alien guy to make them intangible to fall through the floor. Morty's still being super aggressive, so Rick realizes the bug ate Morty's entire empathy center, leading to this amazing exchange.
You literally can't empathize.
Oh, so I'm you now. Quick, get me a kid so I can insult the shit out of him.
Morty suddenly has Evil Morty's face on and shoots the alien very calmly. Rick admits he should have just talked to Morty, to which Morty responds,
What difference does it make? Nothing matters.
which actually isn't that out of character for our Morty.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die.
But the bug winds up ambushing them and getting into Rick's brain. We cut back to the serial killer's house where Summer and the victim are rolling steel drums across the lawn. They wind up dropping one as they try to get it on the car though, alerting the killer. He tells Jerry he didn't finish killing his victim, so Jerry admits it's his daughter, which the serial killer takes to mean Jerry was going to kill his own daughter. So he's terrified and relieved when the cops that he called finally show up. Jerry points out he's also a serial killer and says he's only here for the girls, to which the serial killer says he won't let Jerry touch them. An absolutely out of left field ending for this B-plot. I think my favorite B-plot so far this season. The serial killer yells for help out to the cops, and Jerry suddenly takes him into a headlock, screaming he's a normal guy, not a killer, to which the serial killer responds by chasing him around as the detective guy out front is losing his mind because he's working on his birthday. Rick wakes up with bags under his eyes from the bug in his brain. Morty helps him up before shooting some attacking aliens, which Rick is heartbroken over, scanning the dead alien and calling his wife to let her know. Morty stops him and drags him away from the fight so they can escape, delivering some pretty aggressive, "You're right, it's hard to have an overly empathetic partner" lines that just like, to me, feels so forced. Like, this isn't what empathy is at all, and they're acknowledging that by having it be a giant bug monster. But then to go back and have Morty learn the lesson anyways, despite the ridiculous level of exaggeration, when in reality the lesson should be that empathy is vital for clear communication, especially with people you disagree with, but like everything, we have to have some healthy limits on it. But anyways, they make it to the ship. Summer calls Rick's phone, which Morty confiscated, so he answers and tells her Rick's out out of commission at the moment. She says she needs help saving Jerry, to which Morty says the very Rick line.
We can get another dad!
But she disagrees, and while Rick's making origami because the writers believe that empathy is toxic, seems to know no limits on exaggeration, Rick hugs Summer while Morty has a pretty numbed out face on. He convinces the cops to let him try to talk to Jerry, who has locked himself in the killer's disgusting bathroom, so Morty tries to talk the killer down. And we see a framed picture of the killer clown, John Wayne Gacy, as well as another framed picture of his mom, I'm guessing his pet cat, and a bowl of candy. Morty uses his lack of empathy to coldly tell the killer what he needed to hear to come out with his hands up, thinking the standoff was over, knowing the cops would shoot him the moment he stepped outside. We cut to them back in the garage with all of the serial killer's 60-gallon drums, which is hilarious, and Morty asks,
You always feel like this? Like, cut off like this?
Yeah.
And here we need to think about this, because it doesn't actually make sense. Like, they're describing him here as cut off from his empathy, connection, feelings, whatever. That's called being disassociated, but that's just not the character we've known for 9 seasons, or even in this episode alone. Rick is not some numbed out or disassociated guy. He's constantly either miserable or pursuing pleasures or feeling lonely, sometimes happy, a lot of the time anger. Not to mention the dozens of times we've seen him empathize. And most importantly to me personally is the fact that someone who's reading Being in Time, which they made a whole thing about in the opening, and taking it to heart like they were trying to depict him here, also being almost done with it, that's not someone who would just accept such a passive role in their own interactions with the world, to just be like, oh yeah, I can't empathize with people, or maybe I'm disassociated, so I guess the way I treat people and act in the world is just unchangeable as a result. That doesn't track. Being in Time encourages an active role in your own life. Hell, even when he lashed out earlier, you can see he felt bad for it. There's just so much conflicted character work they've done, in my personal opinion, to just come out and say Rick is either incapable of empathizing or permanently disassociated. I think they were aiming too hard at trying to make it another, like, mile in each other's shoes situation, and they kind of ignored some of what they've already set up for him as a character. But at least while he's still got the bug in his head, he says something good to Morty, telling him he shouldn't be unable to hear when people are abusive to him, because those are warning signs that he should protect himself. And that to me is another hint that we're leading up to some kind of event between them. Morty asks if he's admitting to being a piece of shit. He says yes, and his admission is enough to satisfy Morty's concern, because at least it means Rick recognizes the issues and doesn't think they're nothing, I guess. I like that Rick smiles here too. Morty heads up to his room and Rick portals him a Pokemon card pack, which is a beautiful gesture, but heartbreakingly, Morty says,
I wish I could enjoy this.
Obviously because they're basically treating this as Morty having had his empathy taken out of him, which to the writers seems to mean all feelings except anger. But you could also choose to see it as more of a loss of innocence, but no matter what, this is just commentary on the fact that for a kid, there are certain experiences where you're just not going to be able to go back to normal afterwards. Hell, that can happen as an adult too, trust me. Maybe I've been interpreting this too much as an anti-empathy episode, but it honestly has felt that way to me, and I kind of hate anti-empathy stuff, especially when they open the episode on a Nazi's philosophy book. We cut to Rick having some vodka in his distillery, next to a picture of them winning the Dancing with Stars competition, which is cute. He chugs a giant pint of the vodka, which seems to poison the brain bug, killing it. Which, what's the metaphor here? That alcohol killed the empathy in Rick's brain, killing the bug? That's what it seems like to me, and it's hilarious, but also terribly concerning. But it does fit. He has always used alcohol as a way to avoid his emotions. A truly classic episode. A couple arc points I disagree with, personally, but they in no way ruin the episode, which was fantastic, and technically has that type of ending where there's like a 0.1% chance he hallucinated the bug coming out, and he's still hallucinating right now.
Sleepy or Mort is an example of Rick and Morty at their absolute peak. Crazy environments, a hammered god character, subverted storylines, and somehow still genuine emotional moments that land sprinkled throughout. I can't believe they're pulling off a perfect season this late in the game. Let's break the episode down, starting with the title, which is a reference to Salute Your Shorts, obviously the connection there, mainly being the camp aspect, but they combine aspects of that and summer camp nightmares with the campers taking over the camp thing, and Camp Krusty from The Simpsons with the going to a bar and having the local townies take over the camp by force thing. American Dad actually parodied the exact same plot, parodying even the building and name, but here they just took the windows on either side of the same red door type thing, keeping it a little more subtle, but the bartender is definitely a grumpy Mo type, and they do the same positioning of the bar. Interestingly, the episode is actually only the 13th total of Rick and Morty to be rated TVMA from the FCC because of all the alien weed smoking, I guess? Not the incest baby one though, that one's fine. The episode opens in the principal's office, which is surprisingly low detail, with a nondescript board, shelf contents, and trash. Usually the animators include at least one joke in the background somewhere. Maybe this crack means something though, but it turns out Morty and Summer have been causing havoc at school with a bunch of sci-fi stuff, starting with this alien dip type stuff that seems to grant experiential memory, making the kids just spend all day pleasuring themselves to their own memories. There's a pretty quick setup here that pays off like 30 seconds later here.
Do we have any canola oil?
They start a short-lived Naruto reference by having the principal say,
Morty replacing himself with ninja clones,
which is I think just a fractured reference to the world of Naruto's substitution jutsu, which we see him employ a little later on. Technically you can use substitution jutsu on your own shadow clone, but I don't think that's what they meant, especially since they show him using normal substitution jutsu, which in the show is often used with log just like they do here, but not usually one that's flipping you off. It also reminds me a little bit of this.
Chris? Ha! You got sunflowered!
Summer apparently made the toilets all announce your weight when you sit on it, which is funny, so they finally get expelled, to which Jerry responds,
can't you just suspend them with pay?
Obviously a cop joke, referencing how that's what always happens after their misbehavior. Beth expresses frustration and Summer mutes all the adults with a boomer frequency jammer, and during this whole scene with Beth and the principal are freaking out and angry, look at Jerry just having a good time. What is he even doing here? Like, this is his reaction to not being able to hear other adults or himself? But Beth calls Rick, who portals in with his cute little gardening outfit, holding a gardening trowel, which is confusing because later we see this.
You can't back out of this deal. I got a pallet full of people-sized carrots.
So it seems like he was already turning people into giant carrots for sale before walking in, so what's the little trowel for? But anyways, he seems to immediately know what's happening and claps to disable Summer's muting device. Beth tells him the kids are expelled, so he turns the principal into a carrot, and we get the setup for the post-credits scene. I'll just cut together the related scenes here.
Turning people into carrots won't help you beat the genie allegations.
I won't dignify that with a response, Jerry, but I will make you a carrot at some point.
We should steal a car.
Future carrot.
Cool horse.
Just do it already!
He then turns him back, making him immediately agree to unexpel the kids and give them all A's. Not the first time he's used this tactic to get what he wants from a member of the school staff.
I've got so many issues.
The animators clearly also have Jerry imagining what it feels like to be a carrot, while Summer and Morty seem weirdly happy that Rick tortured the principal. Beth is mad, but Morty says,
He's being a lazy piece of shit.
and it's funny that Rick gets mad and goes for him, because literally last episode,
Are you saying you're a piece of shit?
Yeah.
we see Morty literally do the jutsu hand signs with that signature Evil Morty stare, and in a puff of smoke, he swaps with a middle fingering log. So Rick says he'll send them to a behavior camp for spoiled kids, as he summons Morty back like Thor's hammer. The question here being whether he just pulled him from where he was, or initiated a portal to teleport Morty super high up, but directly above him. Cut to Rick and the kids in the ship, Morty kicking the back of his seat while Summer complains that they're being punished for being better than other students. Rick says they're not better and they're only cool because of him, using this analogy.
You two are Remora, spoiled to know you're mooching off a shark.
Which, not fair to Remora, which do latch on to larger sea creatures, but not in a parasitic way. They're not latching on with their mouths. In fact, there's an argument they benefit the larger creature by eating actual parasites. Plus, honestly, Summer is right. You can't drag two teenagers across space in the multiverse and expect them to act normal in school afterwards. Use whatever analogy you want, that's just not ever gonna happen. But anyways, the kids roast his bald spot while he rolls up a window divider like in a cab or a limo, so they prank call him, revealing he wants the cover of Lab Coat magazine, which is pretty funny. As revenge, he activates a device that painfully pulls out all of their devices. I checked them all, no Easter eggs. The stomach one on Summer does not look like the alcohol stomach Rick gave her, but it probably is supposed to be. But they both have arm, leg, head, and chest implants, and you'd think this would come into play at all in the episode, but it really doesn't. They make no effort to show the specific effects of the kids not having their implants. So Rick heals their wounds, then puts them in a pill and launches them down into the camp for spoiled kids, Camp Suregale, very much like the Jetsons. I don't think this is a pun. None of the properties they're parroting have a camp name close to this, and I couldn't find anything in research, but let me know if you recognize it from something. The pod has this techno-dissolving effect, which I really like, and our two main campers come stomping out. And now's a good time to point out that all 4 of the guest stars this week are in Wet Hot American Summer, which prominently features a camp-related story as well. Starting with Joe Trulio of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame, voicing this lizard guy, and Ken Martin of The State and Children's Hospital and lots of other that guy roles you'll vaguely recognize him from, voicing the, I don't know, maybe wombat? Guinea pig? Not sure. But they both have army hats of some sort on and colored sunglasses and act like strict camp counselors, dragging the kids into the camp. In the background, we can see vague signage like welcome campers and activity sign up, a nondescript weapons section, and a map. The counselors then reveal they're not counselors at all, and the camp's been overrun by the campers, and there is a lot in this shot, starting with a little PB character skateboarding, a gear lady, I assume that's Mr. Stabby's son up there, a Gromflemite, a bird person who's a vulture, which is cool, a member of Squanchy species, really bringing everyone into this. Back here is a dude floating on a lawn chair with a bunch of balloons attached, a direct reference to Larry Walters, who did this exact thing, but didn't expect to get 16,000 feet in the air. Actually, the inspiration behind the balloon plot in the movie Up, and finally one of the chud species from that episode. There are a handful of other human and vague aliens in the mix, but they're not references. But as the shot shifts, we do also see one of the corn people from the interdimensional cable, which is interesting. We cut back to Beth and Jerry, who are home alone for the first time in ages, so they immediately start looking for Summer's drug stash. Jerry immediately checks her sock drawer, which also contains her ID, on top of the button to access her drug stash, and if anybody's wondering, there's nothing special in the room, no jokes or references. It actually looks exactly like it usually does, but from a new set of angles. The only thing I find interesting is that she has crystallized xanthanite on her computer, I assume to use the interdimensional internets, like Beth does later on. The drug stash is mostly nonsense, but there are more jars of the memory stuff they spread at school, as well as a couple alien hookahs or bongs, but nothing else recognizable. Beth grabs a little tube with a pre-rolled joint in it. Don't buy pre-rolls, kids. Pre-rolls are for posers. Also, don't smoke until you're like 23. It's terrible for your still developing brain. The science has confirmed it. But Jerry hacks up along while Beth takes very smooth hits, and they do the classic "are you high yet?" conversation before it just kicks in all at once. Rick gets home and yells asking if they want to grab a drink while the kids are at camp. Beth puts the joint out and they hide from him, saying they're not home, which makes him think they're boinking. They finally check what the drug they're taking is using their phone's auto-translate, and that's another thing. Don't do drugs without knowing exactly what they are first. Obviously, respect your body for the love of God. You could be smoking fecal matter for all you know. They are obviously worried that it's called high forever, which we later learn lasts like a week, which is a long time to be high for. I once had some edibles that lasted through the next morning, and waking up still high was kind of an annoying experience. I can't imagine doing it a full week in a row. Back at camp, there's a Mortal Kombat parody called Mortal Mudbutt. There's a roulette table. This lady spray paints farts on the map while the scene happens. Here we have a Numericon, an Arbolian Mentorosocian from the Get Swifty episode. Someone spray painted What Camp back here, several Traflorkians, the one Summer called Glipclops in the season 1 finale, and finally a Fluvian, which we saw in Wedding Squanchers. I think this is supposed to say boob, and here it says Camp Sucks. This guy's playing Frog Her, a Frogger parody. Morty and Summer ask about the camp counselors, and we learn they killed them all. No hidden jokes or details in this shot, just some horrific implications. And for anyone who was kind of thinking, oh, I bet the kids taking over the camp is part of the camp and how they learn a lesson, this is the point where it should be clear that that's definitely not the case. I do want to know who this A+M are for. There's a butts graffiti here, and the campers take the kids on on a tour where we see an Alpha Beatrian, a Gear Girl making out with a Gromphomite, one of these guys whose planet got destroyed in a Rick Convenient Mort. There's a sign for a glory hole back here, another boobs graffiti, and I believe the last alien species we know, which is one of the guys who cheer Rick on when he plays Roy. In the cafeteria there are a lot of tags: eat the poor, yum, LMAO, no money, D's nuts, T plus V, scat, you die, I do your dad, YOLO, a box of fart stuff, a box of shite. Summer asks where all the stuff is coming from, and they say they're all spoiled trust fund kids, so they've just been door dashing whatever they want and no tipping the drivers. This says piss wall with some stains, a spray painted dunce hat, and an Always Sunny reference here, I am the golden god, but slashed out to say loser, and an I'm with stupid tag here. The campers peer pressure the kids into partying with them, and we get a lot of shots with aliens. Remember, I've covered them, so I'm not going to point them out twice, but if any other ones we haven't seen pop up, I will point them out. But the kids start playing while Beth and Jerry are having a little freak out. Beth says about Jackson Pollock's paintings,
It was a visualization of suicide.
which is not accurate. For one, no artist's work universally share one message, and secondly, it's not even really accurate about the pieces it is accurate about, because it was always about all of his internal struggles, which yes included depression and suicidal ideation, but I would say Pollock was about painting the unconscious, not visualizing suicide exclusively, like she said. But Jerry asks her to Google how long they're going to be high for, and they both say the word Google, but on the screen is Schmoogle, which I think is just alien Google. She finds a Questa, obviously a Quora parody, post by Snars B from Andromedo saying to use Darkin, an Arkin parody, get your tentacles on it in the Planet Mart pharmacy, setting up the entire Planet Mart, that's a store later on. The URL is dead, by the way, I checked. The Planet Mart page shows a sign that says shop till you drop. Beth says they should use Rick's Space Cab account to get a ride to Planet Mart, which Jerry correctly points out is still needing Rick's help since she didn't want him to know they were high earlier. Rick is back in his cute gardening outfit spraying some formerly human carrots and arguing with the guy who's supposed to buy them on the phone as he heads into the sub-basement. So they sneak in and Beth says to walk with irregular steps, to which Jerry responds,
He's your dad, not the god of Arrakis.
Obviously a Dune reference, which I now feel I can't specify so I don't spoil the upcoming movie, but it's referencing the worms basically, which they have to walk regularly to avoid attracting. Beth uses the alien cab faring machine and enters Plaxis 4. They get Czar's Dinars, who has 4.5 stars. They get sucked in as he transforms his interior into a limo that apparently looks like the one Beth and Jerry took to prom. We've got some Stanley pretzels down here, and Jerry has a panic attack while Beth tries to calm him down. And I have seen this type of relationship a million times where they get high together or do shrooms or get drunk or something, and one of them is having an awful time basically because the other enjoys doing it while they just don't. And I do feel like that's what's being depicted here, and to me the lesson is don't pressure your partners or friends into doing something they're not comfortable with. It is perfectly okay for one of you to be sober if that's what they prefer, just like it's okay for you to relax with a drink or a bowl or whatever. Jerry is grateful Beth calmed him down though, so he tries to stick his head through the non-existent moon roof to scream that he loves Beth. It causes the guy to crash, but thankfully they were already at Planet Mart. On their way down, we see a generic sign for the Planet Mart, but down here a sign for 20-ply toilet paper, a comfy couch sign, one of those giant Blade Runner style holographic women, an earth shop, clay barn, and free lip service. When they finally land, there's a store called Big Kitties, a pickleball sign, a stop and stop, and a jelly bottom. Also a whale sign that says whale of a sail. Arrow? Maybe they sell air? They survive the landing though, and so does the cab driver thankfully, as they make a joke about how cab drivers have to work way too much to get by. We see the kids waking up with a Bozo tag over Morty and a Tom was here tag over Summer. They do a party montage and we see them draw on this guy's face before they wake up with a pirate mask and a tic-tac-toe and 69 drawn on their faces. They shovel a bunch of food into their mouths, which, like all this partying and gorging, I feel like even without the implants, they've shown them feeling sick from stuff like this before, but whatever. A food fight breaks out and we got to the next morning again with these new face drawings. They have bathroom trouble. Is this a Pickle Rick reference? Other campers knock their porta potties over though, which is disgusting. There's a help tag and a 666 over an RIP tag. They roll out and someone's phone is down here? They have a whole thing later on about needing a phone, so why not take this one? They head to the cafeteria where these guys have spelled out 420. This guy's actively pissing on the piss wall. There's a box of cold ones down here as the campers are about to light this lady's fart for her, and she winds up giving birth as well. There's a cute little turtle here and the words belly of the beast. The campers roll the baby a beer and start chanting chug, so the kids finally decide to leave, only for the campers to threaten them with death if they do. So they tell them to prove their loyalty, they have to force the baby to chug the beer. This is over the line though, so the kids make a run for it, somehow landing the best punchline of the episode.
I wish we hadn't given beer to that baby!
We cut to Jerry waking up in a room that does not look like theirs, but it's framed to make it seem like it, and there's a horse, which is Beth's thing. Jerry thinks they're back home, but we see some price tags hinting that they're still at the mall before the reveal, where we see a win cheap remodel sign. Beth rolls out of bed and starts using her phone to translate. Jerry asks how long they've been there for, and Beth says days, which tracks since days have passed for the kids, so the high must take like a full week. Beth finds the pharmacy, so they go looking for the dark can and find it in one of those locked glass cabinets. They do this great bit where they request an employee and get to see one at a bus stop, then on the bus, then on a plane because the whole planet is the shop. But Beth doesn't want to wait, so she grabs an axe from the fire axe sale. Oh wait, no, she grabs a sign from the fire axe sale. Great joke there. And smashes the glass case before they immediately take the pills, and despite the employee having to take a bus and a plane to get here to help them, the security guy is already present to chase them down. As they run, we see Value Co. Wholesale and Bigger Than Ever signs, a sign for Alien Pizza, and we cut to them running through the back of the store, like the storage area, where they finally find a place to hide from security. Beth reads the box and finds out the dark hand won't work on them, so Jerry tells her he called Rick already, which frustrates her, and we get a really short but to the point exchange to establish the lesson here.
Well, that makes me feel like a baby.
It's okay to be a baby sometimes. I've been a baby our entire marriage, but we should all get a turn.
Well, I did have fun.
Me too.
And Jerry's right, of course nobody should be a Jerry and just accept being a baby for their entire lives, but everyone needs to be carried sometimes, even Rick, and there is nothing wrong with that. We all started out that way, and eventually something in life will happen that will be too much for you on your own. Maybe a week-long drug trip like this, or maybe a breakup, or losing a family member, getting fired, or hell, maybe there is no reason, and life is just suddenly too much for you. And that's okay. It won't be forever, and the moment lands. In under 20 seconds, it's crazy how effective they are at tying things together like that as a writing team. Anyways, Rick portals in, having found the joint, and more stoned than them, cause they only smoked a few hits each max while he smoked it down. He's jealous he didn't get invited to smoke with them and falls over. We cut back to the kids who have gotten to the local town bar called Lucky Lintana's. I talked about the basic design in the opening, but there's a lot of funny signs. Hooch, Rotgut, Drinks, and Wubba, like Wubba Lubba Dub Dub, and a caution sign over the door. Inside, there's an unhappy hour sign, a stay sign, an employer of the year plaque that she got for herself, and a no flannel, no service sign, which is funny because nobody has flannel on. The kids barge in, and the bartender, voiced by Janine Garofalo, makes fun of them for being campers. She grumpily agrees to let them make a phone call to Rick and asks for his phone number, to which Morty replies,
12.
Which is a hilarious reveal for his phone number, but it works, and Rick, still stoned out of his mind, hangs up on them after they blab about all the rich kids alone up at the camp, giving the bartender the idea to take the townies up there and hold the rich kids hostage. We cut back to the adults who are shopping next to a gear dude in the frozen section. They're wondering if the call from the kids was real and if they need to go save them. Beth says,
We need to save the kids in a way where they think we're not fuck-ups they can just blow off.
which is just such a terrible perspective for a parent to take, but is also very accurate to most parents. Instead of feeling like you need a high ground of some sort on your kids, you should just ground yourself to them, let them know you still feel like a kid messing up too, and that it's okay to feel that way. But whatever. Jerry helps the smiling Rick into the shopping cart. Again, remember, he smoked the whole joint. Beth and Jerry shared a few hits. Rick pulls out the portal gun and shoots a portal that he says is to the kids. But when they go through it, they make it clear it's just a portal to here, even though they all start acting like maybe they're different people
now, which the conspiracy theorists online are going to go crazy with, I'm sure, but it's just a gag, people. We cut back to the kids being held in a storage container for ransom. The Numericons and Alpha Betrians are taped to the walls. The townies go to call the parents, and Rick portals them into the storage container, but they are too stoned and are no actual help. Rick says he left his portal gun at the mall, and Summer realizes they smoked her High Forever joint. Rick pulls out the roach and a Zippo finger to finish it, and he claims he gave it to her, setting this up for later.
Or did they take that stuff I gave you for a rainy day?
Summer says,
"This is why we've been acting out, because we have absolute psychos as role models.
You guys are bad parents."
which, yeah, hits it on the head. I mean, we've watched Beth and Jerry be terrible parents for 9 seasons. Like, it's a really dysfunctional family, not that it justifies the kids' behavior, but generally speaking, the best way to improve their behavior would be to remove the insane environment and toxicity that exists in the home. You want normal kids? Give them a normal life. Beth sweetly comforts Jerry as Summer gives the campers a motivational speech to take the camp back from the townies. Morty supports her, which brings a smile to Beth's face. Rick kicks his way out of the storage container, and Morty pushes him into a fight, and the townies attack but obviously get shredded by him, even stoned. After melting this guy and nanobot breathing this guy, he uses these arm blades to slice everyone up before spitting acid on the remainder. The campers join the murder spree, just going through all the environmental shots we've already gotten and killing the townies. Meanwhile, the bartender is learning that the rich parents don't care about their kids before they get attacked. Everyone dying but the bartender lady, which is somehow a line, I guess. Morty and Summer ride the porta potty up to her while she holds Beth and Jerry hostage. Morty uses a throwing axe to disarm her. She surrenders, but the campers want to kill her, and after killing all the other townies, I don't understand why stopping at the puppet master of the other townies is a moral decision at all, but whatever. It's like killing all the goons, but not the boss. Rick literally explodes onto the scene and walks into the water, Summer saying it might sober him up. We cut to later on when emergency services are there and see the PB family picking up their daughter. The lizard guy was the son of a king, this was Mr. Stabby's kid, and this guy's dad was a mob boss, I think? Either way, he introduces the fart baby. Rich corn guy picking up his corn kid, as well as Rich Cromflumite and whatever this species was. Later on, Space Beth says this is Bill Pullman and his kid. She shows up in Rick's ship to pick them up, but now Beth is kicking Space Beth's seat on the way home. Morty tries to frame it all as a positive experience, and Jerry tells him to shut up. Great parenting. And Rick says he wants Del Taco, cause when you're stoned, every TV show thinks you want tacos. You know what I want when I'm stoned? Homemade spaghetti and meatballs. Morty asks how long they'll be high for, and Beth yells forever, but Summer says only a few more days before Beth and Jerry start screaming at Space Beth for not hooking up with them anymore, answering that question. During the cutscene, which I already covered the setup for and showed, we can also see a hungry for apples and a blowing brain sign, and obviously this is a Bugs Bunny reference. And that's all I've got for this episode.
Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and was killing MIT Rick Morty's plan the entire time? It's easy to not view this as a super canon episode, but if you put it in that context, this is actually the most canon episode for Morty Prime ever, solidifying his turn into his own version of what Evil Morty is, just a softer one, kind of like our Rick compared to Rick Prime. It would have been cool to see Morty create his own portal device like a lot of people were theorizing, but I would argue this character step is actually an even bigger deal than that would have been. So let's break the episode down, starting with the title, the first title ever to not have some pun, including either Rick or Morty's names. Literally just the name of the movie, which as the story structure goes, I'd say there's no real connection, but the themes of like healing from past trauma and reconciliation, as well as just the basic listening to your heart over logic, are what are at play in this episode. Which, despite not featuring Rick much, is actually mostly about Morty's relationship to Rick, the same way the movie doesn't feature the dad much, but is largely about the protagonist's relationship with his father. We'll get to the themes as they come up though. The episode opens on an exploded Rick and Morty, who ate the spiciest chili ever made, lots of details in this opening scene. Jerry's a charred husk, Beth's body is fully exploded, Summer is weirdly just decapitated, and Rick's legs are up here while Morty's are spread across the lawn. It kinda seems like he was entering a chili contest maybe? Estate sale Rick portals in wearing a traditional circus ringmaster's outfit that I love. He announces the estate sale open and a bunch more portal in, my favorite being the ninja Rick and Morty up here. We also have a TV head Rick and Morty, which might be connected to the TV head character we get a glimpse of in the President Curtis spin-off trailer, but we'll see. We've got Red Cyclops Rick and Morty, Bathing Suit Rick and Morty, wonder if they've also got a pool, and Rick with the Cyclops visor, and Morty in what looks like a mechanized rice cooker, four-armed, three-eyed Rick and Morty, black Rick and Morty, and fish head Rick and Morty. Our Rick and Morty portal in and head into the garage where we see a Lucha Libre style Rick and Morty, a janitor Rick evaluating a broom. They're all claiming stuff with nondescript sticky notes, and everything is standard garage stuff. The seat and the lampshade, everything are the same colors and designs as usual. Same with the shelf contents. The one major difference is that the poster that is usually in Morty's room is here on Rick's door instead, and this wet Morty is very excited that his wet Rick is claiming it. Morty annoys Rick, who says,
"Go practice your pronouns."
And I do want to clarify for the few looking for incel Rick to be inside C-137 that he is not making fun of the idea that people identify as other genders. He fucks planets, multi-gender aliens, and borderline gods. He cares so little about gender that the idea of being obsessed with its labels is ridiculous to him, is at least what they're clearly aiming for. Rick wants the spinning platform, and we can see someone even claimed this light fixture. He claims the platform while Morty explores his bedroom, finding a pretty standard room, except for the blank spot where the poster from downstairs should be. So I guess this Rick took it from Morty, which is kind of funny. Ninja Morty and Fish Morty wrestle for a snorkel, which is funny because...
Why do you need a snorkel?
Morty keeps walking, and we see the only sticky note with writing that says, "Property of TV Head Rick," on a TV carried by TV Head Rick and Morty. Sunglasses Morty talks to him, saying he's bummed everyone's dead because he's here funeral hopping. They walk past some normal Ricks, and one with downed hair and a proper moustache, as well as a bottle of space Tabasco. Morty is interested in funeral hopping like Sunglasses Morty in order to hear his family say nice things about him, so he tells him to find this universe's Morty's Portal Gun Jr. with cool portal marbles instead of fluid, which seems to be a more stable form since nothing happens when they spill. There's also more beans back here. This family was clearly obsessed with chili. This business Rick claims the family rake. The Sunglasses Morty finds the junior portal gun for Morty, and we see they were dicing fresh onions and peppers back here for the chili before he portals away, revealing his sunglasses are his eyes. And there's also a fully robot Rick and Morty back here going through the fridge, which is kind of funny. They skip the theme song, another way this episode is incredibly unique, and we cut to them in the garage while Rick enjoys his new spinning platform and this hyper-specific motorcycle Rick bought, clearly a Harley Davidson Springer Softail, which is a collector's motorcycle. They don't just turn these out. Morty actually comes to Rick for advice and asks if funeral hopping like Sunglasses Morty is a bad idea, which Rick kind of says is a bad idea, but refuses to fully engage, instead landing the best one-liner of the season.
I'm asking for guidance.
Do whatever you want. It's your funeral.
And I honestly think this is kind of a growth moment for him, because he did first let Morty know it wasn't the best idea, but instead of trying to force the lesson on Morty aggressively like he usually would, he's basically giving him his opinion but telling him he's his own person. Honestly, not a terrible way to handle any question like this. So Morty portals into what seems like a generic Morty funeral, but turns out to be in a Longleg universe, reminding me of This Always Sunny scene. It turns out Longleg's Rick microwaved his Morty, and Longlegs Jessica kisses Morty on the cheek, solidifying our Morty's interest in funeral hopping. He goes to a Bread Morty's funeral where the gravestone says burnt and the picture says he's toast. Then a VR-obsessed universe with a game called Morty's Clone, another called Sequel, and a game called Sequel Part 2. The family's crying, experiencing the funeral in VR. There's some kind of funeral ID up here. I don't understand what I'm looking at here. Did some googling, but I could not find anything similar looking. This Rick's shelf is full of memory VR experiences, including Summer, Crayon Art Volume 1, Invasion, Riding a Bike, Summer Vacation, Haircut, Cyborg, Hacking, Laser, Kindergarten, First Grade, First Tooth, Started Walking, Potty Training, First Birthday, Kidnapped, Drugged, Robots, Clones, and Adventure. And lastly, something starting with an E or a B. E and ending in a D or O and S for Rick. This whole memory storage feels very Black Mirror. Then this crazy like gothic type universe funeral, a Frankenstein universe where they pull his body apart to use in other people, a universe with balloon plant life where they inflate the dead bodies to float into the sky and slowly decompose up there. Then he finally gets to this episode's primary universe where the Morty went by Mort. Inside, we see this crazy Jerry giving a nonsensical speech about his Morty, but he says it with gusto, so those of us prone to falling for that will have thought he'd sounded great. The picture is him in a Letterman jacket, and the slideshow starts with another one. It also includes a shot of him rock climbing, which we later learn is how he died, a shot of him getting some shoes for Christmas, and a shot of him playing baseball, kind of a Field of Dreams reference, I guess. It just cycles through those shots for the remainder of the scene. Jerry gives his impassioned speech about his athletic leader Alpha Mort, and we already get our first hint at how possessive he is.
I loved him because he was mine.
Later at the grave with family's dog, Chesterfield, I checked the graves, no puns or references. One is named Hubble, but the dates don't match the spacecraft or the guy it's named after. Chesterfield runs to Morty though, and the family freaks out upon discovering him, being unaware of portal travel, so we cut to them at home as Morty just explained everything. There's a picture of Chesterfield instead of Snowball, of course, but also a picture of Jerry instead of the flowers that are usually there. The family is mainly just happy Morty is here, and explained that here, Rick is an alcoholic, not realizing that that's true everywhere, but here Jerry kicked him out for it. We cut to them literally watching Field of Dreams, the movie. You could even see the DVD case here. Bunch of cute family pictures, and they seem to have been playing a board game of some sort. Pretty cool lamp here, picture of Jerry and Morty fishing, but he realizes he has to head home before the family starts worrying about him. They tell him to come back anytime, and he portals home to see Jerry stuck in his shirt while Summer streams it. Beth is hammered drunk as usual. Rick is working on his platform and has improved it, but it pulls Morty up by his implants. Later that night, he can't sleep, so he visits the other family, who are obviously very happy to have him over. Morty references Snowball's episode this season, saying,
My dog enslaved me, but not this one.
We cut to them at a hibachi grill as Morty tells them a story where he's temporarily blinded and has to get a new body. They get upset about it, and Jerry asks what Morty's dad says about Rick letting him die over and over. So we cut to our Jerry trying on a new long sleeve shirt and hat as he sings about being Mad Men, because he's in the ad business now, and honestly, weirdly, the entire episode can be summarized by this moment with Morty. Like, he now has the base power that Rick has, being able to pursue whatever he wants through the step of a portal, and the cycle is he is not satisfied with what he has, portals away in search of something better, only to wind up back where he started and still unhappy. The same cycle our Rick has been trying to escape from since the beginning of the story. But anyways, he does some woodworking, making an owl while Jerry makes a table leg. We see the picture of Jerry, who is ripped in this universe, and his dad at the cabin they go to, and it's cool. He turned the garage into a wood shop, honestly. He invites Morty up to the cabin, and they head out, driving the classic pickup to the cabin, which is pretty generic. Some skis up here, cool bear lamp, and the one real Jerry item, the talking fish head up here. Jerry uses a flint and steel to start a fire, which is not that hard to be clear. He acts like it's a really big deal. Got a mounted deer head up here and an owl. Maybe Mort caught that? He seemed to like owls. They grill some T-bones, and afterwards inside, we see another picture of them as Jerry tells the story of Mort falling to his death while free climbing. We can see he's already separated Morty from the portal gun. He cries, we get another family portrait, and I gotta say, for all these family pictures, and the fact that Mort was clearly terrified of Jerry as they're about to reveal, they could have made Mort's expressions in the pictures a little more fearful, but whatever. Morty says he wants to be this Jerry's son, and they hug. He gives Morty the portal gun and says to break it because he doesn't need to leave anymore. When he hesitates, not refuses, just hesitates, Jerry nabs it back and breaks it. The marbles spilling out but not doing any damage. He hugs Morty, who pushes off of him. From this angle we see the saw that he and his dad were using in that old picture, and some bird watching binoculars, I assume. He dives after Morty, who lunges out the door as he screams about how he needs to prepare him to never die like he did for Mort, who again did die. A cool owl watches as Morty runs away. Jerry can't find him, and he instinctively goes to a little lean-to it turns out Mort built. Morty goes through his backpack and seems excited about the candy bar. In his journal, it at first just tracks his lifting journey. It also says he took Jessica out to ice cream and that they hooked up at a planetarium. Jerry also is pressuring him to join the cross-country team on top of lifting and everything, finally saying he wants him to free solo El Capitan, a real place in Yosemite, and definitely not something someone who isn't like an adult professional climber should be doing. It also says he wants me to be able to survive anything. My only hope is to run away, maybe go stay with Z? Who is Z? I don't know. He has a place on campus. He says I can sleep on his couch for as long as I need, plus I have my lifeguarding money. I just need to figure out how to get away from Dad before we leave to Yosemite. Unfortunately, he did not succeed and died on the climb. We cut to Morty researching Rick at the library next to a dude watching stuff I think most libraries block now. He buys a ticket from the guy Jerry talks to later and takes a bus ride to MIT where Rick works in this universe. He finds his class and sits in, seeming happy to see him. We cut to him shoving Morty with a derp face into his office and rambling that he knew portal travel and the central finite curve were real. He pulls out a box of multiverse stuff, kinda reminds us of the time travel stuff box, but he had to put this away so he wouldn't lose his mind. Whereas I guess now we know that the time travel box is actually a trap for aliens who want time travel tech. But Morty asks him to make the portal gun from his own blueprint so he can go home. This Rick says he almost lost it over building the portal gun last time, so he shouldn't try again. He then realizes he's late for his AA meeting and invites Morty along. No familiar faces in the crowd, but they basically just establish that Rick is a recovering alcoholic who's been fully cut off from his family and that his big trauma was losing Diane. But he doesn't realize it was because of Rick Prime, obviously. Also, I don't know what a community tag sale is. They head to Rick's very modern house where we meet his Swedish teacher wife, who immediately realizes Morty is Rick's grandson and also made stew. The house is low detail, no words or jokes in the background, but consistently designed like houses in modern housing magazines. She reminds him to take his meds, and they just establish a really healthy relationship here. Morty undercuts it by asking if she's a fuckbot. Pretty Rick moment there. We also see the cute little kitty for later. The bus station guy tells Jerry where Morty was headed, and we see the whole family came along for the chase. Rick promises to get Morty home, and he pulls a sheet off his desk where there's a box of petri dishes and the portal gun blueprint. The kitty watches him slip his lab coat on before he gives it some good head scritches. During the work montage, we see canister Proto 2, so a big part of it must be containing the fluid safely, which makes sense. We see he's got a machine creating the fluid and moving it into his prototype gun, but it explodes, which his wife just laughs about, as do they. He mixes these different color fluids into the portal green, but it ruins his sandwich, making them share. I truly have no idea if this is supposed to be something specific they're watching. He starts losing his temper more often when they fail. He manages to portal to a fish dimension of some kind, which is progress. He looks at a picture of Diane while unpacking an old box. He burns one of his wife's paintings and doesn't even react, which is obviously the turning point with them. And it's at this point I honestly do think Morty realizes if Rick can't build the portal gun, he can at least die and get him a way out through the estate sale. I don't think he planned for the whole family to show up and die, but I do think he was fully willing to sacrifice Rick to get home. I mean, he clearly is okay destroying their relationship here, and he knows what he's doing. Like, the darkest line of the season is,
"It's the only way I can get home."
Where on God's earth did a 14-year-old boy learn this kind of mind poisoning?
From your husband. Infinitely. It belongs more to me than to you. It belongs more to me than to you.
He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't care, because it's in service of what he wants. It's exactly the point Evil Morty had reached at the end of Season 5, really. But after the montage, she lovingly checks on him again, but he just screams at her. He wants to give up. But Morty, despite even saying how only 2 Ricks ever invented portal travel, tells him he can do it. And look at his face when they cut to that night. He is driving him crazy on purpose, so he'll accidentally kill himself. Meanwhile, the family chokes out the dean at MIT in order to get Rick's address from their records. They recreate the opening scene of the show again, and his wife is worried, but he yells at her and says forget her because there's infinite versions of her out there, completing his Rick arc. They go steal equipment from MIT and a janitor greets him kindly, but without looking, he turns him into a long-necked dog. Rick says,
The problem is morals, Morty. Ethics. I was scared of the gray areas, but now I can live in them.
Which is honestly representative of how they all think, but also like, you just turned a nice janitor into a dog. Like, that's not a gray area. He wasn't even trying to stop you. I love that Morty turned a nice Rick into an abusive one though. Like, intentionally, fully on purpose, because it served his goals. Which is just a perfect metaphor. Like, this is Morty completing the arc of becoming basically just like Rick all the way. His wife moves out and Rick thinks he figured the portal gun out, but the edges are clearly feathered, so that's not normal. We can also see his multiverse box down here, reminding us that he knew this wasn't good for him. But before they can go through the portal, the family shows up to take Morty home, and Jerry says the portal can't be safe. So Rick throws his cat in to prove it, but it comes back skinned. Jerry fires at Rick but misses, and they tussle. Beth pulls her gun on Rick too, but closes her eyes before shooting and winds up hitting the portal, which I guess is not good because it starts sucking everything in and spitting out flesh versions. Jerry manages to shoot Rick and the portal finally explodes, slicing Summer in half. Rick shoots a portal into Jerry's gut to the fish dimension, presumably draining his blood and guts into that dimension and killing him. Finally, Beth, horrified, takes her own life in front of Morty before the cat crawls up and dies next to him. He collapses to his knees but shows no emotion. I do think he was willing to let Rick die, but I don't think he meant for everyone else to die like that too. And then estate sale Rick portals in, announcing the sale. It's the same crowd as before, except for these two and the seahorse Rick and Morty. Our Rick portals in and says there's nothing good here, so they should go home. Sunglasses Morty shows up with some Cracker Jacks and says he looks like shit, so Morty shoots him with a long-necked dog gun without looking. Very Rick or Evil Morty or whatever. Point is, he's arced out. Rick portals them home and they immediately show the pool to ensure us it's actually home, and Jerry gets back in his new Madman outfit to confirm it even more. So while I know there's a portion of you who can't help yourselves and will insist this isn't the real universe they came back to, they are putting the effort in to reassure us here. And yes, I understand infinity means there could be similar ones, but this show doesn't treat infinity like that, and it's still a show. They want to have consistent characters. Anyways, Morty sits numbed out in his room like the first time he switched dimensions, or any other time he does this, because it's a lot. And that night they recreate the series opening scene again, this time with Rick dragging him onto the motorcycle, saying they're going on a hero's journey, the classic story. He tells him to take the wheel, and in this beautiful moment says,
I'm your fucking dad! It's fucking me, Morty!
Yeah, you're my dad! I'm your son!
You're my son!
Because yeah, at this point he basically is. They don't have the healthiest relationship, but they're both growing and changing each other, and this story was about Morty wanting to find that sort of connection, and he does have it with Rick. But he's also becoming more like Rick than ever. After the credits, we catch up with PB, and I just gotta say, I have no issue with the new Rick and Morty voice actors, but good God is the PB one terrible. Like, it is hard to listen to. If you recall though, sprinkled throughout the series, he lost his wife, went to another dimension to take another version of his wife. She realized it wasn't him, reported it to the government who ran tests on him, and now they've built some kind of interdimensional device to find that dimension's original PB, which is presumably where they disappeared to. I know a lot of people were disappointed thinking Morty was going to invent his own portal travel this episode, but I like this ending, and I don't think that door is closed. They have been focused on their relationship this season, so it was a good ending in my opinion. Would have been nice to get another Evil Morty episode, but I guess we're waiting potentially 2 whole years before we get that now. This episode has super strong early ratings though, marking this as a perfect game of a season, 10 for 10. This is by far my favorite since season 3 at least. And there's actually a lot more I've noticed for each episode, as well as details that have been pointed out in the comments that I'm going to be putting together into their own video like I did the last couple seasons. But this time I think I'll do it one episode at a time, so keep an eye out for those, and if you have any details to add, make sure to drop them in the comments. I'm also working on the President Curtis premiere breakdown, which should be out tomorrow, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Season 9, baby. Only an indefinite number more.